April 1st, 2020. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of That's What G Said podcast. Before we get any farther, if you can do me a favor, stop what you're doing real quick. Hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening. If you're listening on YouTube, subscribe. iTunes, hit subscribe. Leave us a nice 5-star rating and review. SoundCloud, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, Spreaker, anywhere that you're listening to That's What G Said. And share it around with some of your friends that might enjoy. Thanks for hanging out with us again here. This episode we'll be talking a ton of baseball and then some horse racing. We preview the baseball season with Mike Abadir, a good friend of mine, a co-host with Mike on the Mike Abadir show. And we spend just we go through every team. First, we give some overall thoughts on the season, what might happen depending on how and when this season may start. We discuss different possibilities, maybe having to think outside the box and change things up a little bit depending on how long of a season or when they're able to get back playing again. And then we go through every team. Starting in the American League East, we go team by team, division by division. We discuss the teams we like, the teams we don't like, who we think is going to be good this year, who was going to struggle, new acquisitions, new players. We go through it all. It's a real deep dive in baseball. And if you're a football fan, if you missed last week's episode where we went through all of the NFL free agency acquisitions. So we got NFL last week, and this week we're going to go through baseball and get you a full preview for the baseball season. And then we got some Wednesday racing from Tampa. I'm going to touch on that. And then on Thursday, there's racing at Gulfstream, at Oaklawn, and at Golden Gate. We're going to go through the Gulfstream card all the way through, and we're going to give you some plays at Oaklawn and then a couple horses at Golden Gate. So lots of baseball, a ton of horse racing, and we're going to get to all of that after we hear from one of our sponsors. It's going to be the interview with Mike Abadir first. We're going to go through baseball, so baseball fans kick back and enjoy. We're going to talk about the season to begin, and then we're going to get into every single team in the league. Just wanted to remind you about one of the sponsors of That's What G Said podcast, Sarah Candle Company. Visit sarahcandles.com, C-E-R-A candles.com. Use the promo code GINO for 10% off of your entire purchase. These are all-natural soy wax candles. They burn longer. They are better for you than the candles out there that have that traditional paraffin wax. I know the people from this company personally. I've grown up with them my whole life. They love candles, and the goal was to have an affordable candle that everyone can enjoy. Use that promo code GINO. My favorite is Fresh Roses. The Fresh Roses scent is awesome. If you're a horse racing fan, they got Del Mar in there. You ever want to know what Del Mar smells like, but you couldn't make it out there? Order your candle right now from Sarah Candle Company. The website, CERA candles.com. SarahCandles.com. Promo code GINO for 10% off your purchase. I'd imagine that most of you probably know this man from a show that I'm the co-host on, the Mike Abadir Show. I've been doing that podcast with Mike for the last couple years now. Good friend of mine, an NFL agent, and he's just a big fan of baseball in general. And he's going to jump in and talk a little baseball with us as we're going to preview the baseball season. Hopefully a season that will come to fruition at some point, Mike. It's that crazy world that we're living in, but hopefully we can give the folks maybe an hour or so about baseball and preview the season, because I was excited diving in. I felt like there were some teams I'm really pumped for watching this year. Hopefully we can get a season started sooner than later.
Yeah, man. First, happy to be joining you on today's episode. I'm stoked to talk a little baseball. I have MLB Network on, and I'm sure you've got it on every once in a while, yep. And there's not a lot of live content. There's not a lot for them to talk about, so they've had a lot of the replays of classic games and things of that nature. Right now, they happen to be talking about the labor deal that was reached, and a big part of that is in the hopes of getting this season back on track and discussing the possibilities of a shortened season. Sounds like they're pretty convinced that if it's going to happen sooner, it's going to happen in front of a crowdless, in a crowdless situation. What do you think about that?
Yeah, Trevor Bauer was talking. He had a really good interview yesterday. It was on the Baseball Tonight podcast, and he's just so outspoken. And he just says exactly what's on his mind. And honestly, I'm sure a lot of guys don't want to play in stadiums like that where there's no fans and, you kind of get a boost from the fans sometimes. But think about all the people we're going to be entertaining that need a little bit of something, that need a little bit of an escape, and that will be tuning in, and he was big on, I wish everybody could have an opportunity on an app, and he was like talking all about how like a lot of the blackouts with certain markets and with the MLB app. And he said, which is true. He said, in this day and age, why can't everybody, if you're a baseball fan, pay like $100 or $150 and just be able to watch all the games on an app? The blackout stuff and being able to have to be in this market and stuff, that's kind of gotten a little out of hand too. So hopefully we all are just hungry for, like you said, live stuff. Like I think for a while now, it's been a few weeks where it's just been like horse racing and wrestling have been really the two things that are pumping out live, like new content. Other than that, we're just watching like tons of replays of games from years ago.
Yeah. And if there's a sport where I think they could do it and it affect the players the least, I think it is baseball.
100% agree.
Because if you think about it, like, okay, so, in high school, we had the parents come to the games, but it wasn't like a football draw in high school, right?
Or basketball.
Or basketball. And then in college baseball, there are a few, I think like Fresno State, Florida State, there's a few regional schools, LSU, they'll get a couple thousand maybe at their games, but it's not stadiums that are filled with fans or anything like that. And in the minors, same thing. You have some teams that draw. But the point I'm getting at is I think most of these guys grew up with at-bats and pitching and focusing without having a stadium of 40,000 screaming fans.
Sure.
So I think they should be able to be fine doing so. Whereas I think maybe it might be kind of hard to get yourself up for basketball or maybe even football.
Well, and even in just like a pure, like maybe which of these big leagues can get started the soonest, baseball is kind of like a social distancing sport. For the most part, like your positions are all feet away from each other. There's very little contact. It's just the
not
players.
A lot of physical proximity.
No, everybody's feet away from each other. It's just literally when players are on the base or up to bat, standing next to the catcher, standing next to the umpire. That's about it. I mean, everybody spread out around the base paths, spread out around the outfield. You'd have to maybe just kind of have players like more in the clubhouse than sitting next to each other in the dugout. Which sure, that wouldn't be that hard to do. Players can just be kind of sitting at their lockers, like watching games from the dugout, whatever it may be. It seems like of all the sports, this might be the one that, like you said, with the crowd, the way it's played, it's not quite contact. So hopefully sooner than later, because unfortunately it feels like so long ago. I mean, we would have only had a few baseball games, but is this not the month of March felt like the longest month in the history of the world?
Do you realize that if March Madness was going on, it wouldn't be over?
It would just be the Sweet 16 round.
Yeah. So, it has been the longest month. Like somebody was saying something about like a month ago today, and I'm like, February? Well, there wasn't a month ago today, really. But I mean, in terms of February, but like 30 days ago, February, whatever it was, 25th or whatnot. And I was like, man, that seems like eons ago.
It does. It's really
How
crazy.
far away does the Super Bowl feel? And really, it was like weeks ago,
Yeah. So
really, really crazy. So let me ask you this. Do you think baseball, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
no,
do you think baseball, being the sport that's kind of like the least progressive, the most traditional, the most conservative, I guess maybe it's kind of a statement and a question. I really hope / do you think they will? I really hope they take advantage of this opportunity to maybe try some new things out. For example, how about robo umpiring?
Sure.
This is a perfect opportunity for them to try that.
Yeah, they're going to have to. I mean, and there's a lot of things that they've been talking about because, now what's going to come into play with different than with, the NBA, which was in the middle of the season. They're going to have a whole different kind of set of circumstances. What do we do? How do we shorten this up, then get to the playoffs? What are we going to do? With baseball, the only, I guess, sort of positive is you can kind of figure out what you're going to do before you start, right? Like, how are we going to do this? Is it going to be, okay, we're going to have a 140 game season or 120 game season, or we're going to start at the All-Star break, whatever it's going to be. We're going to play 162. We're going to play double headers every Tuesday and Sunday. Whatever it's going to be, they can at least kind of have a game plan before they start the season going in. There have been a lot of interesting ideas and things kind of thrown about as, even on the back end of the season, because one of the issues with baseball has always been, okay, now getting into November and December, you're getting into really cold weather for a lot of cities. So they've talked about, maybe playing the playoffs and in particular the World Series at a neutral site, inside of a dome somewhere where weather really wouldn't be an issue. You could play some of those games, a lot of them out here on the West Coast, or I heard Arizona, Dodger Stadium, Angel Stadium, Padres is all stadiums like as possibilities for that. So what are some of the things that you heard, you think, ideas, anything that might be a little bit different about the baseball season this year?
Yeah, the first one I just mentioned, which is the robo umpiring. And the main reason for that is going to be because, again, I'm not so sure that they're going to want umpires, crouched over a catcher, kind of in the situation you're talking about, where you have a batter, you have a catcher, you have an umpire. One less person is probably better.
Yep.
And this is the perfect opportunity to see if we can get it right with the balls and strikes.
Yep.
Right. So, and here's the thing. I think even though players are going to be intense, they're getting paid. They want to keep their jobs. They want to have hitting streaks. They want to, win ball games and win a World Series regardless. I think they're going to be more understanding, right? So if an umpire gets it wrong, I don't think that they're going to be as angry as maybe they normally would have in a normal situation. Everybody understands that this is a very, very awkward predicament, and everybody's going to try to make the best of it. I think they're just going to be happy to get out there and playing ball. So great time to use some type of experiment and that type of thing. Here's it's kind of funny because I laid out like this plan and I was really, really proud of myself. I'm like, I think this is a perfect plan. And then I realized that it doesn't work because of the odd number of teams in the division. And I'm like, oh man, crap. I thought it mathematically worked out perfectly. So I was really happy about that. But let's face it. Do you see any possibility of fans in attendance, not just May, but even June, July, or August?
No, because now what we're starting to hear is that during the warm weather months might be when this virus, if we're able to get a hold of it, and then it's something that might be coming back when things get colder again. So that might not be a positive, when those winter months, when they're thinking about all these sporting events like ramping back up with fans, I hope we'll have the opportunity to ramp them back up. Like one of the, before we start getting into the specifics about the baseball season, like one of the discussions I've heard talked about for the NBA, for example, was, okay, you finish the season, an extra 5 games or something that everybody has or whatever you're going to do it. But they were talking about like having the NBA teams in Vegas, basically like one team to a hotel. And that's where you stay with your team. You're all getting tested, temperature, you're getting the coronavirus test, you're getting, all sorts of, health, like best medical, attention you could possibly get. And you can go to the gym in the hotel. There's like a restaurant in the hotel, but you can't go anywhere else besides there. And then when you go to play and, on the strip right there, there's probably 5 or 6 different basketball, courts they can use, especially if there's no fans going to be there. All they have to really worry about is getting some kind of, cameras and being able to stream it somewhere or, put it on TV. But that's kind of where we are with some of these ideas. It can't really be something that happens with baseball, but that's kind of an interesting idea for basketball because each hotel would kind of be, each team.
Yeah, I had suggested something very similar to baseball. Saris and I had engaged in a kind of a Twitter conversation, as well as a couple other baseball writers, where I'd kind of suggested a plan. Once I realized that my original plan didn't mathematically work out, I kind of revised it and came up with something different. But it's similar to what you're talking about, which is with basketball. You're going to have to regionalize this, and I don't think that we're going to end up having any crowds in baseball for the entirety of the season. So. I don't think that that's going to happen. I think
so. The home field already right off the bat doesn't really matter.
So home field is out the window. So I think what I would do is I would designate stadiums, and let's just say Dodger Stadium is where the NL West plays.
Sure.
The AL West plays in Anaheim. you use the two Texas stadiums, the brand new facility in Arlington or outside of Arlington, wherever it's going to be in Dallas and Houston, and then the Trop and Miami. Right, those are the regional ballparks that you're going to use, and you play all the division games in those stadiums. Right, so my thought process was this: start off the season where every team plays every team within the division, say 10 times. Okay, or actually, I think the way I mathematically worked it out was 7 times. You're going to try to get to like 35 games, and then there's no home and road type situation. You're just going to play neutral games outside of your division, like 1 time a piece or something like that, and then back around to close it out with the division games once again with like another 35. Right, that's going to put you at close to like 90 games.
Yeah,
somewhere in that ballpark. Okay, then what I was looking at doing is this. It depends on when we start, because if that leaves us enough time for, like, let's say another 20, 30 games in the regular season, here's the wrinkle. Take the top, say, 5 teams, just based on record. Well, 3 division winners, and then the 2 best records, which is the typical wild card format, right? But then take, of everybody else, okay, the best team of the worst, right, advances into a playoff format.
Just one and dones.
Right? And then you get to your series formats a little bit down the road.
I think no matter what, and you're saying and I'm saying whatever, we all agree they're going to have to get creative, right? They're going to have to do something outside the box. They're going to have to do something a little bit different. And maybe it's, something similar to what you were just saying. Who knows what it is, but this is going to be a year where and I think you made a really good point earlier. I don't think there's going to be, it's going to be hard to complain about something here, because we're all just going to be, especially baseball, is going to be doing whatever they can. They're going to be doing their best to try to figure out, okay, what works, what's going to keep the players healthy, what's going to be like the best, closest version of the baseball that we know, that will keep the fans happy, that won't feel like it's a completely different game that we're playing. There's going to be a lot of masters to please, sort of, but I feel like I trust them that they're going to figure out something, like you said, just something where we try it, let's everybody get on board. And we just want some sports back, we do. It's rough when we're just not having, the sports to kind of look forward to. I'm sure a lot of us are getting kind of lost on what days of the week it is without games,
I mean, it's going to be a ratings bonanza.
Yeah. When they start back up. I mean, this weekend,
gosh.
WrestleMania is going to be on Sunday. The old WrestleManias that they've been playing on ESPN, which you can watch anytime for free on the WWE Network. You can get a free subscription and get the first couple months for free, and it's only $9.99 a month after that. But you can watch those anytime, and they're airing them on ESPN, and they're getting really good ratings, from WrestleManias from 4 years ago, from 5 years ago, just because people just don't have anything out there to watch. So what was really cool is the baseball website Fangraphs, which is a great website. They did a couple different versions of what the season would look like if it was shortened with their projections. And what they did was they actually did it for 2019 too. So they went back to 2019 and they looked at what the season would have looked like with the shortened season. So they ended up cutting the season off on September the 8th, and there wasn't a whole lot of difference there. The Cubs would have been in the wild card instead of the Brewers, but every other playoff spot remained the same. Then they cut it down again to 132 games, and it was, Yankees, Twins, Indians, Astros, A's. So that was the one where the Rays kind of got left out. And then on the other side, actually, it was pretty similar on the National League. Then they cut it down again if the season ended on August the 14th. So it was really cool. They did it that way. And then they went backwards and they did if the season started and only using the back half of the season. So it was really cool to see some of them. When they did that, the teams that were really good the second half of the season last year, we remember, were the Nationals. They were awesome. And the A's were really good. The A's actually ended up with a better record the last 100 games of the year than the Astros did. So they would have won that division. So it's interesting to see what it would have done last year. And what ends up happening, Mike, when you see it done this year with a lot of the projections is the shorter and shorter the seasons go, I mean, it seems like common sense, but the heavier favorites have less of a margin for error. So there was one really good quote that said, if there was an 81-game season, the Red Sox would have a better chance of making the playoffs than they would right now than they would in a full season with Mookie Betts. So
that's it. That's really interesting.
Yeah, because if the Yankees get one injury or they have a 6 or 7 game losing streak, you don't have that 162 game sample size where everything sort of kind of regresses back to the mean. So, if you're a fan or if you're interested in playing teams this year in baseball that are not like the Dodgers and the Yankees, the shorter and shorter the season is, the better chance those teams actually have to lose. It's kind of similar to like what happened with the Dodgers last year in the playoffs. A 5-game series right off the bat. You have 1 or 2 games where your lineup goes a little bit cold. You face a good pitching performance, and then all of a sudden you're like, uh-oh, you're in some trouble. And so that's what's kind of interesting is the shorter and shorter it goes, it seems like the teams that are not necessarily the juggernauts have an opportunity. So let's start with the American League East. We'll go division by division.
Gino, do you mind if I jump in with
big picture thought?
Kind of alternative? Well, one more possible alternative.
Sure.
Because where I left it off a few moments ago was, you kind of have the best of the rest for that wild card type of play-in game, right? Not that dissimilar. You're going to change the format maybe of how many games you're going to play division rivals versus outside of the division. But ultimately, it's kind of a similar format to what we've been accustomed to the last couple of years. There's also one additional wrinkle that I think would be really cool, and it's kind of a hybrid of kind of like the soccer, relinquishment, relegation team going down, team coming up, but within a season. So here's my thought. And I think this would also be a ratings hit. So typically speaking, by the time you get to like August, September, you kind of know which teams are out of the mix, right? You know for sure the Orioles and the Tigers and those teams, they're completely out of it. They're not even playing for any playoff positioning. It's either spoiler, development, or let's just see what September call-ups are going to come up. Well, we don't even have September call-ups this year, basically, anymore, right? So, it's very limited, and I don't know if you wanted to get into that, but we could maybe talk about that some other time. My thinking is this. So you played that initial, let's say 90 games that I'm talking about in my first scenario. And it'll be like in the minors, they have like a part of the season and a B part of the season, a first half and a second half, right? So we're going to do the same thing, a first half and a second half, except it's not really a half. Kind of like the All-Star break is maybe, 95 games, then the second half is whatever, right? More like 65 games, that type of thing, right? But now it's going to be maybe 90 and then like 25 or 20. So here's where I'm going with this. So the winner, the top, let's just say 5 teams in each league, the 3 division winners, 2 wild cards, they move on into season 2. And they play each other and beat each other up. You're giving America the best 10 teams in baseball just playing every single night, right? Every night you're getting whatever. And you could go AL versus NL or keep it separated. I don't really care, right? So you could see Dodgers and Yankees, and the next night seeing Yankees and Nationals, and then the next night Nationals and Red Sox, whatever, okay? So what do you do with the remaining teams? They're all playing a tournament
to move up
for one team in each league to make it out of it and to be included in the postseason, right? And then you have official postseason, and it's seeded by the way the top 10 teams finished up, and then the last team will be the winner of the poorer bunch, right? Now all of a sudden, those Orioles games and all those other games that would be normally meaningless,
they matter.
They actually matter. The chances aren't great, but there's one team that's going to make it. You're going to get that team that strikes lightning in a bottle because, like you pointed out, we don't have that 162 to see how it would normally all play out. But what if a team kind of finds itself gelling come July or August or, let's just say with 15 games to go, they're playing their best baseball. Normally, they're not going to get a shot. Or in this case, they're not going to get a shot. In a normal season, they might. right? Because they might be able to sneak into the wild card spot. Here, if you fall behind, you're toast in a shortened season. There's no way you're going to make it. So now each set of games has a really cool relevance. The first one is you're just watching pure best of the best baseball. The other one, it's just, hey, who's going to make it out of it? It's very compelling. And you give teams that get hot late, especially probably younger teams, an opportunity. Maybe that would be like the Padres. They would probably be a favorite to make it out of Group B into the playoffs. So I think something like that would be really cool. And like I said, this is the time now to try those type of oddball things and see if it works.
It's worked in other, soccer. It's worked in other sports all around. And
keep something in mind. And people may have forgotten, the Nationals last year through the first 50 games were 19-31.
Yep.
They ended up with the worst 50-game start for an eventual World Series winner. That means something.
It does.
In a season like this, where it's shortened,
they would have had no shot.
They would have had zero shot.
No.
They're 19-31. They're probably toast in an 80 or 90 game season. So, and home games, who needs home games in baseball, right? The World Series, the road team swept all 7 games. So baseball is perfectly set up to get going and go going relatively soon. I think by mid-May, we're going to be seeing ball games. And with that said, let's get cranking away.
I hope you're right. Let's start with...
I hope so, too.
Yeah, we'll go American League East, and then we'll go Central West, and then we'll flip on over to the National League. So we'll give some thoughts on each team. We won't have to go very far to discuss one of the worst teams in baseball this year. One of the worst teams that you'll see. They were bad last year. They at least offensively have a couple guys, like a couple players that are, that are more than a replacement level player. You look at some guys who had decent years last year. Nunez, he's coming off kind of his first full slate of ABs. He had 31 jacks. He's projected to hit around 25. If Mancini's able to get back off the injured list, he's fine. Johns Means pitcher, he was an all-star in 2019. He had a 3.6 ERA, but he kind of came out of nowhere. His splits weren't, he wasn't projected to be that good, so he might come back to life. This pitching staff is awful. I looked and did the research on this team, and I'm still having a tough time trying to name like 5 or 6 players.
Well, there's a reason for that. It's because 6 players have less than a year and a half of MLB service time.
Yeah.
6 players less than a year and a half of MLB service time, right? One of the guys that they got, who's probably a nice acquisition, and he's still 30, so he's still got some years ahead of him, is Jose Iglesias.
Yeah, he's probably going to be one of their better players. Yeah,
so he's got like a decent stick, veteran presence, and that type of thing. I think it all kind of goes back to Chris Davis. Can they get any return on their investment with the guy? Can he find a way to at least get to like 230 or 240? Come on,
Yeah,
and hit 30 bombs, right?
It feels like the 3 or 4 really bad teams in the American League, at least seems like they're, when you're bad for a couple years in a row, you're going to stock up some prospects. So maybe like Baltimore, Detroit, Kansas City are similar in that they've got some coming. They're probably still a year or 2 away before they're able to start to compete at the major league level. But this team is not very good. They're going to lose 100 games again this year easily. Then we get into your and I think they're plus 800 to win the AL East. They are plus 12,500 to win the American League. They're 100,000 plus 100,000 to win the World Series, and they are the number 30th ranked in the ESPN Power Rankings. So yeah, they're going to be towards the bottom wherever you're looking. A weird team is Boston this year. This is your team. You're a Red Sox fan. I think, if we were just talking about their lineup, losing Mookie Betts, of everything that Boston had, they would be able to fill in the loss of Mookie Betts, I think, more offensively than in any spot, maybe bullpen, starting pitching. The problem for me is just starting pitching. This still looks like a really, really good lineup, top to bottom. They don't have a whole lot of holes offensively, but I just don't know, like pitching-wise, especially with Sale, I think, having Tommy John surgery today or very recently when we were recording this on Tuesday. So what are your thoughts with this Red Sox team?
Yeah, lineup-wise, like you said, I mean, their first 4 hitters in the lineup are about as as good as it gets with Benintendi, Devers, Bogarts, and JD Martinez. You're not gonna, you don't need any more production than that. That's gonna get you what you need. Mitch Moreland's one of those guys. He's gonna be playing first base this year. He's one of those guys that somehow, some way finds a way to get some clutch hits. But obviously first base is kind of a question mark. I think eventually they end up putting Michael Chavis there. In that bottom, second, third of the order, a lot of people forget that Michael Chavis, along with Alex Verdugo, both have been given a number one prospect ranking at some point in their career. Yep. And both are still young, 24 and 23 respectively. So Chavis and Verdugo, those are the wild cards. Those are the guys that if they can, fulfill their potential, I think can make this Red Sox really from top to bottom a really, really good lineup. Obviously, Jackie Bradley, very inconsistent guy. It wasn't that long ago, 4 seasons ago, where he had the longest hitting streak in the American League. I mean, the guy can hit. He can hit for power. And he can be clutch, as we saw in the postseason a couple years ago. But he's one of those guys that has a really tough time over 162. Streaky. He's the guy that you're talking about with the 81 game season type of guy that could surprise you and hit 290. Yep. Just like, whoa, where'd that come from? You know what I mean? He's one of those guys who's very streaky. They got a decent bench, and they picked up Jose Peraza from the Reds, and he was one of those guys that was banging 2 seasons ago, had a disappointing 2019. And then Kevin Pillar, super athletic outfielder. I think that's like a nice, quiet pickup that they got. It all goes back to the pitching stuff, like you're talking about, Gino, especially with Sale being out. Yeah. Eduardo Rodriguez really found himself. Nate Eovaldi is all about, he's got all the talent. He's all about how much availability is there with him. And then after that, you're talking about 3 guys who are relative unknowns, right? And Martin Perez has been in the league for a while, but nobody knows who he is. They got him from Minnesota in this past offseason. But yeah, Ryan Weber and Brian Johnson round out the rotation. Brian Johnson, by the way, was a former first rounder, so he's clearly got some talent, but it's taken him a long time really to get to this point. This is his second season in the bigs, and he hasn't really done a whole heck of a lot up to this point.
They could just even use right now like the Porcellos and the Kashners of the world, like guys to just be eating up innings, because they don't even need like that much top of the line starting pitching. They just need like you said, available starting pitching to help eat up some innings. And I mean, we'll just see if they're able to get that. Like, what are your thoughts on the bullpen? They were tied for the league in blown saves in 2019. They have less starting pitching depth, but maybe, from a bullpen strength, do you think that they're better than they were last year?
Workman did a lot better than I expected him to. 1.88 ERA. He blew a lot of saves, though. Yeah. He had 16 saves, but he blew 6 of them. I don't even know how you blow 6 saves with a 1.88 ERA.
I know.
But yeah, it happened. And their setup guy, Matt Barnes, he had 8 blown saves. But his ERA was sub-4. Josh Taylor is decent, and Heath Hembry is one of those guys that's got a lot of experience under his belt that can come in and do the job. I would give their bullpen a C grade. It's a C bullpen. It's one of those that isn't going to carry you to the postseason. It's not one of those bullpens like the Brewers have had the last couple of years where you're like, just get me to the 6th inning, baby. Starting pitcher, just get me full 5 1/3, 5 2/3. We'll take it the rest of the way. Definitely not like that. It's, make a sign of the cross and hope for the best once you get to these guys, because they could come in and give you 4 shutout innings at any given night, or they could blow the save opportunity that they've got, right? Which is what we saw last year.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a weird year, because I think people are going like a little too far on this Red Sox team is going to be terrible, because offensively they're still going to be able to win any game with their lineup. They'll be able to out hit you any time that they all have a good game, or they're all like getting good at bats. But consistency, are they going to be able to stop you from scoring consistently enough? That's just going to be, the major question for them all year. Are they good enough to the point where maybe they make a deal middle of the year? Who knows what they're going to do? They were ranked ESPN Power Rank number 19. They are plus 900 to win the AL East, plus 1,600 to win the American League, and plus 5,000 to win the World Series there. Yeah, just going to be
which is not the worst stab in the world.
No, not really.
To probably contend for a wild card spot.
Yeah.
Here's something I'm going to tell you about this 2020 season. Whenever it starts, Gino, it is going to be really, really interesting to see the mental makeup of these teams, because normally, even the best of teams, like the Dodgers, if they have like a 2 or 3 or I don't think they had many 4-game losing streaks last year or in the last few years, but you have that long road trip, 13 games on the East Coast in 14 nights, and you kind of are just treading water and hoping to get back home just with that one extra night of sleep on your own bed. And then we got Dodger Stadium to look forward to. So that's what gets a lot of teams over that hump is, hey, we're going to wrap up this rough road trip, but we're going to be home in 3 days. Let's just power through this thing. You don't have that. You're probably not going to have that luxury this year.
It's going to be just a different
dynamic. So the
dynamic.
mental makeup is getting. I mean, what can you tell you? You either need to have like a frontline starting pitcher, like a stopper who could stop losing streaks, or right. I mean, you need. If you're a manager, typically it's, hey, we've lost a couple in a row, but we're going to give the ball to our big gun. We're going to give it to Walker Buehler. We're going to give it to Clayton Kershaw. We're going to be home with a homestand starting on Monday. If you don't have either of those things, what do you even tell the clubhouse?
There's been like just a muscle memory, like they've developed these routines, and it's going to be all out of whack, completely thrown into a funk when this baseball season starts. I mean, and as we move, you're right. As we move, it'll be who. I think when it always comes down to something like this, the teams that I'm always going to like trust in weird situations, I think, are the teams that have the like good starting pitching and the most starting pitching. I just feel like that's like the safest and the most constant in a situation like this, where, at the beginning of the season, maybe the offense is a little bit harder to come by. And at least like if you have some solid arms out there, you might be in better shape than everybody else who's trying to get into good shape. So maybe that's something that could hurt a Yankees team early on who, they have a decent lineup now. They went out and got Cole, so they made a big move there. They are, widely thought about with the Dodgers as, one of the top favorites. They are the big favorite in the American League to come out of the American League. They're the heavy favorite in the AL East. They, you put Cole in that rotation, and now with the additional time before the season starts, that really helps the Yankees team that had Paxton that was hurt, that Stanton was hurt, Judge that was hurt. What do you think about this Yanks team?
Yeah, interesting team. Their bullpen is their strength on the pitching side, but even their bullpen is kind of aging now. When you look at their ages, they're all the key guys in their bullpen are early mid-30s. So it'll be interesting to see if they could keep that intensity going. I didn't even know how Aroldis Chapman has been able to play this long and stay relatively healthy for so long. I know he's had a few stints on the DL, but typically closers that throw that hard, they don't have that kind of
durability,
consistent longevity and durability. So props to him and his strength and conditioning coach and whatever he's doing to stay healthy. But yeah, I think you identified the team's Achilles heel. Beyond Garrett Cole, Tanaka's a good pitcher, and Paxton's a good pitcher. How much of them do you get? We'll wait and see. J.A. Happ, he's 37 years old, and Jordan Montgomery. I mean, that's what you're wrapping. That's what your 4 and 5 starters look like. I don't know.
Yeah, because Severino's out now with Tommy John, so that was going to be. They were
and CeCe retired. Yep.
Expecting a lot out of Severino. And here's the one thing. I do respect what Cole has done over the last couple of years. To me, it's just a little bit weird because he's not someone who's had 6 or 7 years of really good baseball to fall back on. He's had 2, and then before that, he was pretty good. He was just another pretty good pitcher. I mean, you look at his years prior to that, his 2016, he had a 1.4 whip. His 2017, he had a 4.2 ERA, and then his K rate skyrocketed the 2 years when he went to Houston. And maybe, he figured things out, he changed some things, he tweaked some things, sure. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on you now. It's a little different in Houston when, well, obviously we know that some weird stuff was going on, but when you're the deuce behind Verlander, there's not as much pressure on you there. And now you are the guy. They just spent a ton of money on you. You're supposed to be the savior. You're supposed to be the one that's supposed to come and vault them over the top, give them what they needed to win a World Series now. I just got a weird feeling he's not going to be, low, like mid-2 ERAs again, and that maybe he's more up into the mid-3 ERAs.
I don't think it's that weird, Gino.
Yeah,
Here's a trivia question, and I hate it when people ask trivia questions without knowing the answer, but I don't know the answer. When is the last time that you saw the Yankees sign a free agent pitcher who met the expectations?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen very often.
No.
And I agree with you. Now, the thing with Garrett Cole is this, and I agree with you about his Pirates years and kind of how he's worked his way through this. But keep in mind, the guy, and I've been following him since high school. I actually represented a football player who was playing at Orange Lutheran here in Orange, or we're in LA, but in Orange County, and so he'd always been telling me about Garrett Cole. Went to a couple of his high school games. He stayed local, went to UCLA. He was a first round pick, first overall pick in the first round. So the guy has been groomed to be that guy, and he's rounded into form and become who he was supposed to be. So in terms of pedigree, he's achieving what many insiders in the game expected him to do in Pittsburgh. It just took maybe a little bit longer, and he's 29 years old now. And the thing is this, how much of Verlander rubbed off on him, and how much of that has staying power, right? Because, I remember like Smoltz and Maddox and Glavine, once they all teamed up, they became even that much better collectively. I mean, Maddox was a really good pitcher in Chicago, but he went to the Braves, took it to another level. Those guys all fed off of each other, and then they ended up kind of getting broken apart for a little bit. Glavine never was the same with the Mets. Smoltz, he ended up becoming a closer, and he was hurt, so it doesn't really count. And Maddox's best years were behind him.
Yep.
Once they all kind of, and I think a lot of that, and Smoltz used to talk about it, they used to go to like sports psychologists and stuff to help them keep their head in the game. I think Verlander was a very, very positive impact on Cole. I think his career took off once he teamed up with him. And hey, let's face it, the white elephant in the room, right? The cheating.
Yep.
How much did Cole benefit from that? Now, I'm not saying that he's a cheater and he's like a trash
but in
pitcher
wins,
without it.
And in run support, and things like that, like a lot less pressure on you when you're up 3-0 instead of 0-0 in the fourth inning, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, so he benefited in some way.
Sure.
Let's just put it to you that way. So, and hey, for all we know, they may have even been
doing something,
been able to convey the signs to the hitter, even been able to steal some, pick up on something. The hitter thinks he's going to be sitting on a fastball, or we're going to, whatever. I don't know. But so I don't want to necessarily go full on Garrett Cole bashing.
No.
Here's the thing. Agree or disagree, Gino. Most of the players in their lineup had career years last year.
Yeah.
Do you replicate that? I mean, how often do you replicate?
It was a weird year because they were so banged up, but they still produced so much. It was like bizarre. I can't recall ever seeing something like it where they were missing so many key players for a while, but then when the key players came back or the replacement level players were all incredible. You don't get that generally, so we can look at it either way, right? Even if they come back to life a little bit, they're going to be a good baseball team. But I don't know. I kind of got a weird feeling that it's not just going to be all hunky-dory for the Yankees this year.
No.
Not as easy as everybody's just kind of saying Dodgers, Yankees. It's never that easy, right?
No, it's never that easy. And is DJ LeMahieu really a batting title guy? Or
he had a great year.
Is he a batting title guy?
I mean, he had a great year last year. You start to look down their lineup. I think they may have a hole or two. We've talked about them. Like maybe when you get into a series, they're the kind of team that you can attack and maybe like pitch around some of their really, really good hitters. So yeah, I'm not saying they're not going to make the playoffs or anything like that, but I don't know if they're just going to be the dominant team that everybody expects them to be this year. They're going to be good. They're going to be fun. ESPN has them power ranked number 2. They're the minus 300 to win the AL East. They're plus 150 to win the American League, and they're plus 400 to win the World Series. So they're going to be, one of the top choices in everything that you're looking at. I just don't know if it's going to be that easy.
No, I don't think so. I really think that the Tampa Rays, and look, you started off the segment by talking about pitching, and they're probably
go to Tampa. Yeah.
Yeah, if there's a beast in the East pitching wise, it's Tampa, right? And I think they've got enough hitters, and they can manufacture enough runs. It's a very young lineup. They don't have a single guy that's the age of 30, if you could believe that. And in fact, their entire bench doesn't either, outside of Jose Martinez, is 31. Think about that for a second. It's a very, very young team. And to me, I'd be excited if I'm a Tampa fan. We were talking a little bit about Tampa on the Mike Abadir show last week, just for a moment, with Greg Auman from The Athletic, and he seemed to be pretty high on them. Yeah. Didn't you think so? Based on, and they picked up Hunter Renfroe, who I think is going to be a really, really dynamic player for them offensively. Willie Adames is still trying to find himself, and I think he's going to be the guy that people expected him to be when he was so highly touted coming in here. Mike Zunino as a catcher, I think he's really good at handling a pitching staff, and I think you're going to see his stick. Austin Meadows blew up after that trade from Pittsburgh. He didn't necessarily do it the whole season, but he's one of those guys having that first really good year under his belt. I think will make a big, big difference. I think this is the division winner, Gino.
They've built this.
Call me crazy.
No, you're not crazy. They're the number 4th ranked team in the ESPN Power Rankings. They're plus 350 to win the AL East. They're plus 1,000 to win the AL, plus 2,800 to win the World Series. Like, they're a top 5 to 8 team in any projections that you look at. What's so phenomenal to me about this Rays team every year is that the front office is just incredible. They're able to just put together these lineups that are so deep where when one or two key players gets an injury or is having like a slump or a down year, they are just able to fill the void right in. Just like next man up, next man up, next man up. They do it in the bullpen. They do it with their starting rotation. I mean, last year, their starting rotation was so banged up. But when you look at what the top of their rotation looks like, with Charlie Morton, Blake Snell, and Glass now, and you have Chirinos, Yarbrough in there, and then one of the keys to their team, this year is a guy who I've been pretty high on, and he's been a highly projected prospect. He's one of those dual hitter pitchers, but if he can just focus on pitching, and it's Brendan McKay, who I love him because he's got the 90210 name. The combination of Dylan McKay and
there you go.
And Brendan Walsh there from 90210. He is a key, whether he be an end of the rotation type guy, he projects if he's your 4th starter, he is like a really highly projected 4th starter. This team is good. They just continue to find arms in the bullpen. They run their organization really well. It's the most Moneyball thing that you'll ever see, because it's another team where you probably a lot of their names. It's different than Baltimore, where you look at the Rays team and you're like, oh yeah, I know that. Oh yeah, I remember him. Or yeah, oh yeah, he was supposed to be good. Or you know what, he had like 2 good years and then he got hurt. It's a lot of those players year in and year out with them. They're good. They're gonna be a really good ball club again. And this is a type of team, Mike, when the shorter and shorter and shorter the season gets, they've got the opportunity to really compete with the Yankees in a 100-game season, in a 110-game season, because their pitching is going to be good almost all the time.
Yeah, and I think their bullpen is very good. They're listed as a closer by committee team, but I think Nick Anderson is going to seize that position and run with it. He's a guy that they got in a trade with the Miami Marlins midseason last year. Guy's very hard throwing, and he's only had a year under his belt, and I think just having that full off season with the club, I think is gonna be huge for him. I'm going to say that Nick Anderson is a surprise all-star pick from the closer mid-relief position.
Let's close out the American League East with a fun young team, the Toronto Blue Jays. Last year we saw the debuts of familiar names, the son of Dante Bichette, the son of Craig Biggio, and the son of Vladimir Guerrero all showed up for the Blue Jays and got some ABs in the major league. And this team, just on paper, they have a ton more pitching this year. I don't know how good they're going to be, but they just should be a lot more competitive. They don't feel like they're one of these really, really, really bad teams, like we might have a few of them in the American League. This team should be really fun to watch on a night-to-night basis. I mean, they add Ryu, who's probably not a 1. Ryu's probably like a really nice 2 or number 2, like low number 2, high level like number 3 starter. You put Tanner Rourke and Chase Anderson in there. If Shoemaker's ever able to stay healthy, all of a sudden that has a look of a decent starting rotation. I think this team's going to be fun at least.
Absolutely. I think this is going to be a really fun team to watch and to see them develop. And, they're probably a year or so away.
Yep, yeah.
But they've made some pretty good moves like you're talking about. And they got some veterans like Travis Shaw and even somebody, like a World Series winner like Joe Panic. That could be like a nice veteran presence or a Brandon Drury, those type of things. Those type of guys, they make a difference over the long haul of the season, whether it be pinch hitting or relieving, providing some relief when guys are tired and banged up. And this year, that's probably going to be the case with a lot of double headers. Yeah. Bench is going to mean a whole heck of a lot more this year than ever before because of that. And like you mentioned, Ryu, he probably, is going to have a tough time duplicating his really, really incredible 2019 season. It's probably not a 1, like you said, but he's definitely a good pitcher and is going to get you some innings. Obviously, health has been an issue with him. If he could stay healthy, this guy's going to be a nice addition for the Blue Jays. Where do you have them kind of landing? They're probably within the division.
Yeah, I think that they could be maybe within a few games of the Red Sox if things go well for them. I think they're probably a couple games under 500. And I have them definitely above Baltimore, but I don't think they're going to be some bottom feeder. The thing that worries me a little bit is they still feel like they need some help in the bullpen. It's kind of Giles and then a lot of unproven arms. But, bullpens are very, very like year to year. They're very, the margin, they can be really kind of fluky sometimes. Sometimes it's not as difficult to put together a couple decent arms in a pen. So we'll see. I mean, I don't think they're going to be like a really, really bad team like the Orioles or like a couple teams that we might be seeing in the Central. As we move on to the Central. So, yeah, Toronto was the ESPN Power Rank number 22. They're plus 3,300 to win the AL East. They're plus 5,000 to win the American League. They're plus 25,000 to win the World Series. They're also pumped about Nate Pearson, who's a highly touted prospect. So maybe we'll get to see him show up at some point. AL Central. This is the team that I think I'm one of the top 2 teams I'm the highest on this year as far as taking a really big step. And a lot of people are because they made a lot of big moves this year, and that's the Chicago White Sox. I really love what this team has done. I was kind of high on them last year and I thought they would continue to improve. And now what they did, they went out and they added Yasmani Grandal, who's going to get you, 25 home runs and a 350 on-base percentage. They added Dallas Keuchel, who's another one who's not really like a 1 anymore. He's kind of got more of a reputation, but he's still a good top 2, 3 starter in your rotation who's been there, who's won some big games, and he doesn't have a whole ton of innings on his arm from last year. They had Encarnacion, who's a 25 to 30 home run guy, and they had Gio Gonzalez, who's another good like end of the rotation starter. He's a former All-Star. He's projected to have like a 4 ERA. Luis Robert is this rookie who everybody loves. They're really highly projected. I'm really high on this team, this White Sox team. I don't know if they're good enough to compete with the Twins, who are really good. I think they can battle for a wild card spot, though.
Yeah, I think they're definitely on the rise. Hey, I was going to ask you, whatever happened to their hard-throwing pitcher that they got from the Red Sox, Michael Kopech?
He had Tommy John, and then he's going to be back soon. I think he's
any chance for this season?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, they're expecting him by like July at the latest, like late.
See, that could be like making a trade.
A huge addition for them, because now you start to look at a pitching staff that's really not that bad. Giolotto, he made some adjustments. We don't know which Giolotto we're going to get. 2 years ago he wasn't great, but then last year he was incredible. He throws harder. He throws more strikes. He has kind of a new repertoire. And the one guy who I was really high on, and I was kind of expecting him to have a big year last year, and he regressed a little bit, and that's Ronaldo Lopez, who he has some ability. He can strike you out or two. Now you start to look at a starting staff that's Keuchel, Giolotto, Lopez, and then Gonzalez at the end of it. You throw Cease in the mix. Like, this is not a bad starting rotation. They're hoping to have Carlos Rodon by the All-Star break. You mentioned Michael Kopech. They added Steve Cishek to help the bullpen out a little bit. They're going for it. sometimes it doesn't work where all the moves you make, fit. But when you look at this lineup, they're good. They're starting rotations better. They've added to their bullpen. They're trying to address everything. Minnesota's a good baseball team, and Minnesota made some good additions this year too. I don't know if Chicago is going to be able to, compete with a team that won 100 games last year and maybe got better. But this is a team that I'm going to probably play a lot individually, game to game. I'll probably have them a lot in fantasy and some DraftKings pitching matchups and stuff like that. So I'm really high on the White Sox.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Bummer and Alex Colon may have been the most underrated 1-2 punch in a bullpen. They're fantastic, lefty righty respectively. They're very, very underrated duo there in the south side of Chicago. And hey, man, that lineup, man. I mean, 1 to 5: Tim Anderson, Yohan Moncada, Abreu, Grandal, Encarnacion, and even further down, Jimenez and Mazzara that they got from Texas.
And then Robert, you just don't know what you're going to get from this guy who's like the favorite to win the Rookie of the Year in a lot of betting sites, and he's projected to hit between 25 and 30 home runs. He just looks like
he is in my
stud.
And high average and everything. Stolen base artist, he's got it all, man. 5-tool kind of guy. He's in my top 3 for our Rookie of the Year predictions.
They are ranked, ESPN Power ranked number 18. They're plus 350 to win the AL Central, which I think might be worth a few bucks. They're plus 1,200 to win the AL, and they're plus 4,500 to win the World Series. Let's move on in the Central to the Cleveland Indians. They had some good spurts throughout last year. They've lost a couple big pieces from their rotation that were, big parts of their rotation in the last few years. Like, this has been one of the best teams in baseball over the last 5 seasons. I think they're going to continue to regress a bit because the division with the White Sox moving up and with the Twins getting a little bit better, I'm not sure how good this Indians team is. The lineup is what concerns me. I think pitching-wise, if Clevenger is able to get healthy now because the season's a little farther back, they still have some solid arms, but I just don't like their depth really at all.
Agreed. I'm not very high on this team. Obviously, anytime you've got Lindor, the excitement's going to be there. And I think Franmil Reyes is one of those guys that can bang out 40, 45 home runs. His batting average isn't great, but he's sure fun to watch. It's just a huge presence at the plate. But overall, yeah. And I really can't pinpoint it because they don't have any major holes. I just think that their window of opportunity is closed up.
Sure.
They had a lot of really good players and pitchers, and
Bauer
for some
and
reason
some of the bullpen pieces, Andrew Miller, and them,
they've kind of dismantled it, and I don't know if that's because they've got some organizational minor league depth that they're kind of waiting on, or what the case may be. But I think that they blew it up knowing that they weren't going to win with this team. It's kind of like the Clippers, when they broke up the trio. So that's kind of how I'm looking at the Indians. They're probably a mid-pack finisher.
Yeah, they added Cesar Hernandez, Domingo Santana. Those will be okay acquisitions for them. And, Plesac, Savali, they'll give them okay, starting pitching. I'm just not that high on them. They're actually ESPN Power ranked number 9, which I think is a little high. They're plus 275 to win the AL Central. They're plus 1,200 to win the American League, and they're plus 4,000 to win the World Series. But yeah, I'm not too high on them this year. The team next coming up is the Detroit Tigers. They're another one of those teams going to be battling for probably the worst team in baseball. But I think the Detroit Tigers and the Royals, who we'll talk about next, they do have some things to look forward to. They have multiple really good young pitching prospects that are probably a year away that might show up sometime throughout the season, but they just don't have a ton of really good current major league talent that's ready to go right now.
Yeah, the best hitter is probably still Miguel Cabrera, and his best years were 5 years ago.
Way behind him. Yeah. It's just hard to find a whole lot to be excited about, except for their future. This is another team who I'm assuming, with Baltimore and maybe even Kansas City, but they're going to be probably close to losing 100 games again.
See, I'm actually high on Kansas City, and I'll wait until.
Yeah. I remember you were higher on Kansas City last year.
I was high on them last year. Yeah,
and you know what? And they on paper they don't look as bad as the other bad teams. That's what sticks out about Kansas City a little bit, and maybe they're going to go for it a little bit this year. So, okay, let's transition into Kansas City. So tell us a little bit about why you like them this year.
Apologize. Took a gulp of water there.
No problem.
This is a pretty intense marathon. No commercial breaks.
No, I know. Yeah, we're used to the we're used to the 3 or 4 breaks for sure.
Exactly. So the Royals. I mean, here's the thing with them. I think they're very well balanced offensively. When you look at that lineup,
it is.
Whit Merrifield and Mondesi, Jorge Soler. He was a big prospect from back in the day.
48 home runs last year.
He had the quietest 48 home run season.
I would have never
in recent memory.
Remembered that. Yeah, never.
Yeah, and I think their lineup from top to bottom is pretty decent. That is it Maikel Franco?
Yeah, Franco
whatever.
coming in from Philly.
I think that's going to be a big
better. He was supposed to be better. There was kind of a lot of pressure on him because he was kind of a highly regarded. Sometimes you need the new scenery. And you mentioned with Merrifield, Dozier, Soler, Mondesi, who's now going to have a little more time to get healthy because he was banged up. You have Salvador Perez coming back after missing due to a big injury. Nicky Lopez is someone that they're really, really high on. And then you mentioned Franco. Alex Gordon's back for one more time. I think
and Ryan O'Hearn. I don't know if you mentioned him or not.
No.
He's a basher.
So they really have like 4 starters who, even their starting pitching is kind of interesting because like all of them have had a good year or so, but then they've had a bad year after, or they haven't been quite. It's like you have with Keller, with Junis, with Jake Junis, with Danny Duffy, and then even Mike Montgomery coming in. So, there's much worse staffs out there. All of these guys, if they hit their best, they have more of a ceiling than a lot of the teams that are quote unquote bad teams. I feel like.
I honestly think that they're going to compete for a wild card spot. Every year you have a team or two that come out of nowhere. Sure. I thought that they were going to be that team last year. But hey, look, they're a young team. They only have 2 guys in their starting lineup that are north of 30. Whit Merrifield is 31 and Alex Gordon's 36. And outside of that, man, I mean, they're a bunch of 25, 26, 27-year-olds. And that's usually a good formula like we've seen with the Braves. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time for things to kind of click and come together. But, I kind of, when I'm looking at teams, when I'm kind of handicapping in baseball, I'll usually kind of have like a plus, minus, or a dash for, does he have more upside still? Does this hitter have more upside? And I think they've got a lot of pluses. Alex Gordon's best is behind him, right? But he might be able to replicate. So he might.
Yeah, and he's more of like a veteran presence there.
Yeah, he might get like a dash or something like that. But I think we're going to see a lot out of Mondesi, and I think Franco is going to be in a better place to take another step forward. Like you said, there was a lot of expectations for him in Philadelphia, and I think sometimes when you get that fresh start, that might be the free agent signing that they look back at as, hey, this guy not just only shored up third base, but he brought a stick and hit 25 plus home runs type thing. Where he kind of solidifies himself in that lineup. So I have this team as a wild card.
So you got to put a few bucks on them because they're actually number 26 in the ESPN Power Rankings. They are plus 10,000 to win the AL Central, 12,000 to win the AL, and 50,000 to win the World Series. And I think Detroit didn't mention them. Detroit's number 29 in the ESPN Power Rankings, and they're slightly lower. They're actually 100,000 plus 100,000 to win the World Series there. So the experts don't think a whole lot of the NL Central. You got to put a few bucks on the Royals there, though, because if they have a good year, we're going to all be saying, great call, Mike Abadir. I mean, the Twins look like one of the best teams in baseball this year, right? They won 100-plus games last year, and don't they look better?
Big move getting, the rich get richer, right?
Yeah.
When you're talking about bringing a basher like Donaldson, getting a little bit old, but he still brings it every night. And, when that guy's healthy, man, he's probably been one of the best third basemen in the last decade in baseball between his years of the A's, Blue Jays, and the Braves. And I think he's going to keep doing his thing with Minnesota this year. Yeah, man, look, their lineup is terrific. They led the league in home runs last year. And, I don't know if they're going to be able to replicate that or not. A lot of guys, it's hard to tell because I don't know if they had career years or not because a lot of these guys are young and hadn't been in the league long enough.
You're
for
right.
Me to
That's
know
a great point.
If it's a career year or not. So
no big sample size. We don't know. Maybe they are just as good, maybe not. Regardless, even if they don't hit as many home runs, they should be able to not give up as many home runs this year because their pitching is just deeper. They made some moves there. I mean, adding, Rich Hill's going to be banged up for a while, but again, the longer we wait before we start the season, that's even better for them in getting Rich Hill healthy, who definitely is one that's hard to trust because he does get banged up a lot. But I've always been a really big Kenta Maeda guy. He's a very nice, like, middle of the rotation or a great bullpen arm. They added Chacin also. They added Homer Bailey. Those are 4 guys who might be in their starting rotation.
Yeah, but they, outside of Berrios, I don't think that there's anybody that's like a stopper.
It's terrifying. They don't scare you. They're just more arms, which
Odorizzo is your number 2.
Yeah.
So that kind of says something. The offense is definitely going to carry this team, and they're going to go as far as their pitching will take them. And I don't know. To me, that's the big question mark on this ball club is how will their starting rotation hold up? And that's kind of my take on Minnesota.
Yep, Pineda's got a 39-game suspension still to serve. Maybe a little more time for Byron Buxton to get healthy. They're the ESPN Power Rankings number 5 team. They're minus 150 to win the AL Central. They're plus 800 to win the American League, plus 2,000 to win the World Series. We move on to the American League West, and we will begin with a team that everyone's curious about, the Astros. Now, do you think because of the coronavirus stuff and the fact that it's been a while since all this Astros stuff is going on, do you think that's going to be better for the Astros when the season starts, as far as maybe they're not going to get all the vitriol from every fan base because we've just been through a weird time in the world and it's not quite as fresh?
New manager, there's been some distance from the cheating scandal. But I think once the season starts back up, I think it's not even necessarily the hate that they're going to get from the fans, which they're going to be able to completely avoid this season more likely than not. But I think it's animosity between them and the other players. And I think ultimately it's going to have a big impact on this team.
I do too.
I think it is going to be one of the best teams to have like a poor season that we've seen in a while.
Yeah.
I actually have them finishing either 3rd or 4th.
I don't think they make the playoffs this year. I think they're going to miss the playoffs. Or like maybe be one of the teams like barely getting in for a while. I just don't. I think it's going to be harder for them this year. There's just going to be a lot of pressure on them. And you know what? To talk about how like their season's going to start, I'm a little bit concerned when I start to look through their pitching staff. Because, they lost Cole. Their Verlander and Greinke are a little bit older. And Verlander's banged up to start the season. He'll probably be okay now since the season's going to be starting a little bit later. But, I mean, if they get injured again in the season, Verlander and Greinke, it's not going to surprise me. He's coming off a year where he gave up a ton of home runs already last year. And then
they're 36 and 37, let's keep in mind.
Once you get past those two, you're left with 3 starters who have not done a whole heck of a lot. They're going to be needing a ton of innings from Lance McCullers, who's just coming back from an injury. Then we're talking about Urquidy. I mean, we're not talking about players that have more than even a full year of experience. I don't know. I'm even with more than the everything that happened with the cheating scandal, I don't know if this pitching staff is quite good enough to be able to carry you through a season.
I agree. I totally agree. I like Osuna, Presley, and Josh James in the bullpen.
The pen is
they
fine.
were talking about maybe even converting Josh James to a starter, at least until Verlander comes back. I think that would be a pretty big mistake. But, yeah, overall, man, I just don't think that they're going to be able to overcome every team in the bigs that goes up against them wanting to bury them.
Yeah.
Just wanting to absolutely bury them.
And if we're in a smaller season, the team that we're going to talk about in a few minutes is a team that I'm extremely, extremely high on this year. Well, let's get to the Angels first. This lineup is good, and I want the Angels to be good this year, and I think they're going to be better, and they could, any game, they could beat you with their lineup. I'm just so concerned with their depth of pitching. It seems like kind of a broken record with a lot of these teams. It seems like a few teams have a lot of starting pitching depth, and then a lot of other teams don't. The Angels are one of them. Like, they would have loved to get either a Cole. I mean, even with the trade with the Dodgers, like Stripling would have been someone that they could have used in their bullpen to kind of be a versatile reliever bullpen. They're going to be really fun and a lot more fun to watch, and it's going to be tough to pitch to their lineup. I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah. No, their lineup's fantastic, and I think if they could get Ohtani back on the mound again,
he's a
that would be
key.
huge.
You're right. He's a huge key to them
because then you have Andrew Heaney and Julio Teheran, Ohtani, and maybe you could get some innings at least out of Dylan Bundy. Now that becomes a kind of a decent rotation where the hitting is going to be good enough, and if you could get solid 6 innings out of these guys, 5 to 6 innings out of these guys on a nightly basis. See, the big problem with a lot of these teams that we're talking about, and like you mentioned, it's kind of a consistent theme, right? Most of these teams have really good hitting and subpar pitching. We're seeing that a lot in the American League. But it's got to balance out somehow in terms of wins, right?
No, you're right.
Somebody has to win, somebody has to lose.
It doesn't really matter that much until you get into the playoffs more so.
Until you get into the playoffs, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think the real question is going to be how many teams get buried because their pitchers exiting in the 3rd or 4th inning. You have to bring in your relievers, and then you got to get ready for another game in a couple of hours.
Yep.
Right? If they're going to have as many double headers as they're talking about, that's going to be a big, big issue. So, so having an Ohtani would be huge is the bottom line.
They got Felix Pena.
Even if they could get just like 10 starts out of him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They don't need him to start 25 games. They just need him there and for big games when they, like you said, kind of maybe need a stopper here and there. They just not to be hurt, to have the option of using him if they start to struggle. Pena, Griffin Canning help the staff. Bundy, he gives up a lot of home runs, but he actually has some good strikeout stuff. Heaney is another one, and Teheran. So, I mean, they have Andrees's only had a couple starts the last few years. Pat Sandoval is another. There's a weird hodgepodge. Like I can see it being formed if a couple of these guys just have decent years. It's not going to take a whole lot for them to be competitive. They just can't have the last couple of years. Their pitching has been like anything that can go wrong will go wrong, and it's just completely fallen through the bottom floor. I mean, they can't have a situation like that. Even with their strong lineup, they need one or two of these pitchers to really step up and to be good for them. Because their team that they're going to be facing a lot in this division is a team that has one of the best pitching staffs, in my opinion, in the league. And this is the team that I'm really high on. I know you were a lot higher on them last year than I was. And I saw the way that this A's team ended the season in their final 100 games. They were better than the Astros. Their lineup is one of the most underrated lineups each and every year. And this pitching staff is incredible. So before I kind of get a little more into them, what do you think about this A's team?
Yeah, just one more quick note on the Angels.
Sure.
I'm very excited. I know you mentioned Griffin Canning. Another youngster that I'm super, super excited to see is Joe Adell. I really hope that he gets an opportunity to, he's one of those guys. I put a star next to him in terms of Rookie of the Year consideration. This guy's super, super talented. So I'm excited about him. Yeah, in terms of the A's, they have, look, man, they're stacked. They're stacked on all sides of the ball, so to speak.
Yeah.
They're
young.
Starting from they're young, they're deep, they got power, they got athleticism, and they did all that last year with Chris Davis having a really, really subpar year. It'll be interesting to see if he could go back to being Mr. Consistent. I think he's one of those guys that has done the rare feat of landing on like the same batting average and home runs multiple years. And if he could get back to that 40 home run guy in that lineup, I mean, this is a team that I, like you, am very high on them, especially too because we're gonna hopefully get to see full seasons out of Jesus Luzardo, Sean Manaea, the one who broke the cheating scandals, Mike Fiers, good presence there. He's kind of the older veteran, and then AJ Puck. as well as Frankie Montes. Too. So, I mean, a lot of these guys are highly touted.
ERA last year. Yes.
So, I mean, and then their bullpen was just lights out. They're fantastic.
Hendricks has turned into one of the best closers in the game. I just think that they're from top to bottom. They're just a really, really good baseball team. They are projected to have 10 players on their team with over 15 home runs, 7 with over 20, and then 3 more with over 30. They're in ESPN. They're power ranked number 8. They're plus 300 to win the AL West, which I'm going to play. They're plus 1,400 to win the American League. I think with their pitching, they legitimately have an opportunity in a series to beat a team like the Yankees, and they're plus 3,500 to win the World Series. This is one of the teams that I'm the most high on this year. I absolutely love this A's team. I think they're going to be really, really good. Let's close out the AL West.
Yeah, and by the way, it'll be interesting to see kind of does Stephen Piscotty really take that next step forward. I was kind of high on him with St. Louis, and he came over to the A's because he had a mother who was going through cancer, I believe, if I remember correctly. And this guy, he's still young enough. He's still in his late 20s, and I think this guy can maybe put it together and have like a career type year out of the outfield. But one more thing I wanted to quickly mention regarding their bullpen, and I don't know if this is one of those kind of money ball strategies, but I don't think it's by accident, because when you look at their lineup, their starting 9, or at least let's just say, through the DH Chris Davis, outside of the DH Chris Davis, it's a very young lineup. Okay, when you look at their pitching staff, outside of Mike Fiers, very young pitching staff, 22, 24, 27, 28. But then you go over to their bullpen, and their key guys are all in their mid-30s. Hendricks, Petit,
Soria,
and Diekman. And I wonder if that's by strategy, right? You have you have to have a crazy mental makeup to be a reliever.
Yes.
Come in just the worst of predicaments, jams all the time. And I think when you're talking about a young team, I think it's very demoralizing giving up leads. And so I think it's a unique strategy. I don't think that there's any other team in baseball where there are 4 key guys. There might be a couple teams. I guess the Yankees, which I mentioned earlier. But I don't know, man. I know that's kind of an odd thing to kind of like stop and kind of think about. But, man, I'll tell you, man, when you're giving up leads, there is nothing that can bring down and deflate a team. On the flip side, to have that shutdown closing unit, that shutdown committee that can get you to the promised land, it could really build momentum, man.
Yep. I like this team. 2 more teams in the American League to discuss. One's kind of an interesting team. They had a good first half of the year last year. They didn't make a whole lot of moves throughout their lineup, but their pitching staff, they brought in Kluber, and now this Texas Rangers team is going to be a team that will hope that they have one of the better starting rotations in the league with Minor and Lynn, who had really good years last year. You put them together with Kluber. Where do you stand with Texas?
I have them finishing second in the division behind the A's. So I think that they've done some nice things. I think the Kluber moves is a nice move. The guy that I'm Todd Frazier, he's going to be a good, veteran presence in that lineup. The guy I'm really excited for is Willie Calhoun. I know he kind of suffered an injury earlier this year.
But he should be ready now, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like he's going to be ready to rock and roll. So, yeah, I mean, they're a team that's very well managed. I like managers who are able to get more out of their players, kind of beat the expectations. And I think the Rangers are kind of one of those teams that can quietly hang in there and, make some noise.
Yeah, they're going to be good. I think when you have a pitching staff that's going to be that solid, they shouldn't have a lot of bad stretches where they're losing 6, 7, 8, 10 games in a row. They're number 21 in the ESPN Power Rankings. They're plus 1,600 to win the ALS, plus 3,300 to win the American League, plus 12,500 to win the World Series. The Seattle Mariners, as we close out the American League, they're they're a tough team on paper. It's incredible. It feels like 10 years ago that they had that unbelievable start to the season last year, and then they just went absolutely ice cold after that. There are a couple decent starters. They have a couple veterans in their lineup. They're ESPN Power Rank number 28. They're a huge price to win the AL West, the American League. They're 50,000 plus 50,000 to win the World Series. Maybe it's a little easier for their staff in a shorter season. They bring in Graveman, they bring in Walker, who are coming back from injuries, but I don't know. I just don't get really excited about this team.
It is a 4A team.
Yeah, right. I mean, Seager, Crawford, maybe Haniger, but there's just so many question marks about their lineup. Yeah, really.
I don't have a lot to say about them.
No, we don't have to spend a whole lot of time on them.
They're a very good team.
Yeah, we just don't. It's hard when you don't have a lot to say. They're going to be, they're projected to be one of the bottom teams in the league. So easy for us to move on over to the National League. And the East and the Central both look like divisions that at least are projected to be super competitive. And then the West is kind of projected to be the opposite. So we'll start in the National League East with the Braves, who, they made a couple additions. This is a team that bullpen's definitely stronger than it was at the beginning of last year. Their starting pitching should be a little bit stronger, especially if Hamels is healthy and he's able to help out there. And then when you have like their lineup that's young and that's going to be locked up for a while, like they're going to be a competitive team in contention for a long time. Kind of feels like the last few years, though, you and I are never really as high on the Braves.
Yeah, and I've learned the lesson, Gino. I think this team is the real deal, and I think the Ozuna move is huge. He's got a ton of ability, and he's one of those guys. I think when it's hot and humid in the middle of the summer in Atlanta, I don't know if that's going to be this year, but in the future years, he's going to be a guy that's going to rake. Yeah, I'm high on this team. I think their top four, in the lineup are as good, probably the best in baseball. Acuna, Albies, Freeman, and Ozuna. It'd be very tough to find a team that can top those top four in that lineup. And, their pitching staff is interesting because you've got a lot of young guys who have had success, like Soraka, like Fried, like Fulte. These guys have all had success, along with Cole Hamels. I think the wild card is going to be King Felix.
Yeah, can you give them a little something at the back end of the rotation? Newcomb is it gives them a little bit of versatility there too. And then their bullpen with Melanson, Green, and Will Smith. I mean, that's three better relievers than they had early in last year when Luke Jackson was closing games for them. You know? So they're definitely just a deeper, better, stronger built team throughout. I mean, one of their only real question marks, I guess, is third base, and it'll be either Austin Riley, who had that really good start to the year, and then in Camargo. But they're a good team. They're a deep team. They're ESPN projected power ranking number 6. They're your plus 200 to plus 200 favorites to win the NL East. They're plus 800 to win the NL. They're plus 1800 to win the World Series. This is a good team. I mean, if Dansby Swanson can continue to just be like a pretty good player, not a whole lot of knocks.
Former Vandy teammate of Walker Buehler.
Yeah.
They have a very deep, experienced bench as well, by the way, with Tyler Flowers and Culberson. Adam
even like Travis D'Arnaud, who kind of had a reawakening last year. He'll help them out a little bit too. They're good. They're like a well-built ball club, and I don't think they're solid. They're going to be right in the mix with I don't know about Miami, the Marlins, who I guess we'll mention next briefly. They're another one of these teams where when you're bad for a few years, you're going to start to gain some really nice assets and some really good players. And what Miami did at least this year was they brought in a couple other veterans to where they shouldn't be so bad. 2 or 3 other veterans that can kind of help them out a little bit. But they're a team that still feels like their best young players are another year and a half away.
I think that's very well put, Gino. We don't know yet what kind of executive Derek Jeter is.
No.
But what we do know is, for a quote-unquote owner, he's very involved. Doesn't it seem like he kind of plays the general manager role at times with this team? So he's definitely making his. I'd be very curious actually to look at the titles of their front office and
who's making the decisions.
And who's making all the calls, But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting team because, like you said, they brought in some veteran guys like Corey Dickerson. They got
Jonathan Villar and Jesus Aguilar.
And Aguilar was one of those guys that was bashing a couple years ago with Milwaukee and then just kind of dropped off a cliff, went to Tampa. Now he gets kind of settled for an entire offseason, fresh start in Miami. This Isan Diaz kid is pretty good.
Diaz, Brinson, Ramirez, they like. Yeah, they're all like good.
Brinson hasn't materialized, man. He's been a top-rated prospect for multiple years, and it just hasn't happened. So it'll be interesting to see if he kind of is able to kind of find that power stroke there.
Yeah, their pitching is not bad. I like Alcantara was an all-star in 2019. He had a 3.8 ERA and 32 starts. In 2018, Urena had a 3.9 ERA and a 1.18 WHIP. And Caleb Smith is not bad. He can strike guys out, and all 5 of their starters are 28 and under. So, they have they have some upside. They just still feel like they're maybe a year and a half or 2 away from like seriously contending in what's a pretty tough division. A team that I think suffered a really big blow just last week when we found out that Noah Syndergaard is going to have Tommy John surgery and he's going to miss this season because, on paper, it looked like the Mets were going to get back to having a really nice starting staff. They made a couple moves with the extra time. Maybe they'll be able to get Cespedes back and get a little production out of him. But I just worry now, losing someone like Syndergaard, who didn't even have a very good year last year, and he's kind of been trending the opposite way. He just is one that goes out there and gives you a ton of innings, eats a ton of innings up. I don't know if they have enough now in a pretty competitive division.
It'll all be about what can the Mets get out of Stroman, Porcello, and Michael Wacha. 3 veterans that have come over from different teams, as well as Steven Matz. Does he finally take that next step forward? He's a lefty. He's been assured a spot in the rotation. He's one of those guys that could surprise everybody and get 15, 16 wins. He's got some good stuff. But, yeah, it all begins and ends with DeGrom. So, do the Mets get some quality innings? Does Edwin Diaz go back to being the absolute shutdown closer he was with the Mariners?
Can you imagine
a lot of question marks,
Because like that bullpen, if you got the best version of Diaz, the best version of Familia, and the best version of Betances, like that's a good back 3 pieces of a bullpen. And we're not talking about like these guys being 10 years removed from that. We're talking about 1 or 2 years.
Absolutely.
So,
there doubt about that.
Question marks on their team. I would like them so much more if we just had Syndergaard also. They were a team that, like Fangraphs projections have had, before Syndergaard got hurt, had the Mets winning 87 games and being in a battle in the wild card with the Padres. So, people are high on this group of Mets. They have some young ability. I know you were super high on Pete Alonso. You called him out, as being like a big star early on, and he was your Rookie of the Year pick last year, so you were all over that one. There's some fun. There's some reason to be excited if you're a Mets fan. It's just before the season even starts and you know that you're like your number 2 pitcher is just already out for the year. That's just a big blow right away. And then the Phillies, who I don't know what this Phillies team, man. I really don't. I'm not sure what to think with them. I don't think they're going to be bad. I still feel like maybe they need another starter. Nola was like a Cy Young stud 2 years ago, and then last year he was just okay. This is one of the more difficult teams in the entire league for me to get a feel for. I really don't have a great gauge on them this year. What do you think about the Phillies?
Yeah, I mean, look, their lineup is super talented with McCutchen, Segura, and Harper, and Hoskins, Real Muto, Gregorius, Kingery. I mean, up and down their lineup, they've got guys who have proven themselves in the big leagues, MVP guys, multiple MVP guys. I can't put a finger on it, Gino.
Yeah.
I just think, first of all, even though their pitching staff, it's kind of crazy because, most of the guys they're recognizable names, like Nola, Zach Wheeler, Jake Arrieta, even Vince Velasquez and Zach Eflin are decent pitchers. But for whatever reason, this team has just not been able to put it together.
No,
I left them out of my playoff mix last year. I'm planning to do the same.
I think the same
year.
too. Yeah,
I just don't have them in there. I don't like their bullpen at all. And Zach Wheeler has been one of those guys. You know, he was involved. He was a top prospect for the Giants.
Yeah,
way back when. And to me, when you're a pitcher, you're a top prospect, and you're making your way now to your third team already, and you haven't hit 30. That kind of says something. You know, he just hasn't been able to be that complete package. Hey, man, maybe the new manager will make a difference. I don't know. But for right now, this is not a team that I've got as a playoff ball club.
No, neither does ESPN. They're power ranked number 17. They're plus 350 to win the NL East, plus 1,200 to win the NL, plus 4,000 to win the World Series. And then we go to your World Series reigning champs, the Washington Nationals, who, I mean, they caught lightning in a bottle in a sense last year that, like you mentioned, the beginning of the year, this was not a very good baseball team. They got a little bit healthy at the end of the year. Their pitching started to line up really well. They're going to bring that pitching back again. They're going to have the same 1 through 4 starters, but they are definitely going to lose some with Rendon. They're able to fill in some spots. They're really high on Carter Kieboom, who's a youngster coming up. They have a couple veterans that they may be able to kind of plug and play if need be, guys like Kendrick and Cabrera. So this is probably going to be a good team again, like with their pitching. I don't think they're going to be that bad, but we've seen it. You've seen it as a Red Sox fan. I've seen it as a Dodgers fan. It's not easy to go to the World Series and come back. I'm just curious what this time off will do. Will it maybe help them, give them a little bit more time for some of their arms to recover after going longer, deeper into the season? I'm not like Strasburg last year. I would have taken him maybe over any pitcher in a big game, but I don't think that would be the case if I was starting a franchise. He's not always been the one that I would necessarily trust to build my team around. I'll take him in a game, on any short list, sure. So I still think they're going to be like battling for a wild card team. I think they'll probably be behind the Braves. I have them pick second in the division.
Yeah, a tough team for me to put a finger on for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned. Obviously losing a big stick in the middle of the lineup is going to be impactful, but they've got a very athletic lineup. Start at the top with Trey Turner. Juan Soto just got his driver's license, just turned 21. Victor Robles is one of those guys that is really exciting to watch, and I think him and Soto are going to be a great outfield tandem for this ball club for the next decade. So I think, and you mentioned Carter Kieboom as well, him and his brother are both in the organization. I think this is one of those teams like the Braves. Their fan base is going to be happy for a long time to come. Mm-hmm. And if it's not this year, it's going to be next year type team, Even
little things like Eric Dames is another one, who can come in and hit you home run, and especially when you don't need him to be an everyday producer in your lineup. So they feel like they're a little bit deeper than they've been. Like you mentioned, the bench, some of the like the options that they have to bring in off the bench, and even their bullpen. Like this is a team who, the last few years, they've always had the really good starting pitching, but their bullpen has struggled. But that was not the case last year with Daniel Hudson, with Doolittle, with Harris. Like that's not a bad couple to anchor the back end of your bullpen.
That's true. Gino, when I'm evaluating a lot of these teams, especially if they have got a good starting rotation, and the Nationals have frontline starters, so we know that eating innings is not going to be an issue for them. Yep. They've got tremendous Cy Young type pitchers. So I go to what kind of production are they going to get up the middle and out of first base and right field. And that's a very telling sign for a team. And so when you go up the middle, starting with the catcher, Yan Gomes, second baseman, Starlin Castro, not bad, serviceable, right? Trey Turner, he's good. Victor Robles is good.
Yeah.
But that first base, right field, power positions, Eric Dames and Adam Eaton. Eaton's one of those guys that's very athletic. It just can't stay on the field long enough. So I think they're subpar in both of those positions.
Yeah, they have
Don't get me wrong. I like Eric Dames.
No,
He's done some great things.
For sure.
Yeah, I think he's done good things since he came over from the Korean League. But with that said, I mean, those are two power positions that you have to get production out of. and I don't see it from them. And I think that's going to be the biggest issue. And I think that's why the loss of Rendon is going to be a kind of a glaring omission in that lineup, right? It's going to put pressure on everybody else to have to do that much more. So even if Soto and Robles do what everybody thinks they're going to do, which is to keep improving and put up crazy numbers, and Trey Turner stealing 50 bases, it's probably not going to be enough, if you're not going to get anything out of right field, second base, first base, catcher, etc. And Carter Kieboom, he's been a highly rated prospect for a while now. He's still very young, but he's got to do it, man. He's got to make it happen, and we don't know yet where he's where he fits into the equation.
We move on from the East to the Central. This one, as far as the betting odds are concerned, is supposed to be the most competitive division in baseball. It looks like there's really, on paper, only one team that, if you're a fan of that team, you don't really feel like you have a shot. The other four teams, you can build a case for them to win this division. Let's begin with a team that I know you and I were both not really high on last year, and I'm not high on them again this year, and they are the slight favorite in this division to win. That is the Cubs. To me, there are a lot of question marks around this Cubs team. Their pitching staff's getting a little bit older. I didn't really love their staff last year, and now I'm really concerned about them. And then you have questions about, what's going to happen with Chris Bryant. Are they going to re-sign Baez? What's up with Rendon? Maybe a Kimbrel, someone to trade if they don't get off to a good start. It's going to be a first-time manager who's kind of a younger man. I think he's going to be a good manager, but it's going to be his first time. He knows a lot of these players on like a friend level and not necessarily the manager-to-player level. I'm a little worried about the Cubs. I'm not going to have them in the playoffs.
They're going to be battling Pittsburgh for last in the division.
I
don't like the bottom half of their lineup at all, and their pitching staff. They've all experienced their best seasons.
Yep.
The best seasons for all five pitchers is behind them. They're all in their 30s, and you might get some innings out of them, but you're not going to get excellence out of them. So this is one of those really, really sad stories of a team that should have been a World Series contender for 5 to 7 years, every single year. And at least they got that one ring to show for it. And it's kind of a bummer that they weren't able to sustain it. But, maybe their biggest subtraction is their manager.
I agree. He's a good manager. Things did not go well for them, and we can highlight it in their pitching staff. And now he's going to be over the Angels. I think he's going to do some good things there. Sometimes I guess what you're preaching just doesn't hit the same group after a while. But I don't know. I just don't get a good feel for the Cubs, which is the polar opposite of the team, the next team that we're going to talk about. Another team that made if you say teams that won the offseason, this was definitely one of them. And we're talking about the Cincinnati Reds, who, you look at their starting pitching, Trevor Bauer, Luis Castillo, Sonny Gray, and Wade Miley at the top of that rotation. They made a couple additions there. They bring in Pedro Strop to add the bullpen. They bring in Mike Moustakas and Nick Castellanos and Shogo Akiyama. This team, on paper, is very, very well built. I like this team a lot in this division, Mike.
I do too. This is my division winner.
I'm going to pick them too.
If you remember going into last year, I predicted that they'd be a top 5 pitching
You were higher
staff.
Yes, you were very high on them last year too, and they're just their pitching
is better.
They're better. They're much better. And the rest of the division is weaker. Right? They're all every team feels like they're a little bit weaker than they were last year. The Cubs, even the Cardinals, and so the Reds are a little bit better. The Pirates looked like they were going to be a little bit better last year. They're struggling. So, this Reds team, when you look at a team now that's going to be able to throw out Eugenio Suarez, Joey Votto, Moustakas, Castellanos, Freddie Galvis, Nick Senzel, Winker, Akiyama, that's a good team. They're going to have 4 legitimate starting pitchers. Descalafini's another one who, he can give you some innings there too if you need be. And then with their bullpen, when you have, Iglesias, Amir Garrett, Lorenzen, Molly, Strop at the end of the bull, I like this team a lot. I'm going to take some flyers on this team, definitely to win the Central. They are the power ranked team that is number 13 in the ESPN power rankings. They're plus 275 to win the NL Central, plus 1,400 to win the National, and plus 4,000 to win the World Series.
Yeah, and their minor league depth isn't necessarily there, but they've got some good prospects though. And we saw a glimpse of Nick Senzel last year. They've got some guys like Jonathan India, Hunter Green, who's going to be a phenom. He's one of those guys that, he's a starting pitcher and can hit. He's one of those two-way guys. So they've got some guys that hopefully we're going to be seeing in the big leagues in the next year or two. I think this team is going to be fun to watch for a while.
Let's jump into the Milwaukee Brewers. Yeah, I worry. Like the Brewers have done a really good job over the last couple of years. It's a lot of it's been on with their bullpen and a strong bullpen, and now they've got Christian Yelich locked up for a while, and Hiura was really good. He hit 19 home runs in 84 games. Their top of their lineup is still solid, but they just feel like they have a lot of holes too. They feel kind of similar to what I think maybe what we were talking about the Phillies or maybe even the Nationals, like a good team in good spots, but how big are their holes going to be? I mean, like, what is their starting pitching going to look like? Like after Woodruff, who's, probably their number one, then we're talking about Lindblom, who's back from Korea, Adrian Hauser, Brett Anderson, Eric Lauers, the rest of their starting rotation. I like Brock Holt. I think that's going to be a good move for them. You know about Holt. He's kind of a nice plug and play, kind of fill in everywhere. And you obviously have a stud in the bullpen in Hader, who even started to come back to life a little bit last year. So I don't know. I don't think they're going to be an awful team, but I think they're going to be like a 500 team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think they're that trio kind of in the middle of the lineup, Kane and Yelich, and, like you mentioned, the rookie SoCal product, Keston Hiura. He's the real deal, only 23 years old. Outside of that, you have a bunch of wild cards in that lineup. So, I'm not very high on their lineup. I'm not high on their pitching staff. Their bullpen's been their MVP for a while now. It'll probably be their, it'll probably be the single reason why they will contend. But ultimately, they just don't have enough firepower, either offensively or pitching-wise.
Up next is the number 25th ranked team in the ESPN Power Rankings. That's the Pittsburgh Pirates. I don't see a whole lot to look forward to for this team. They have one player that's projected to hit over 16 home runs this year, and that's Josh Bell. They only have one starter that's projected under a 4 ERA, and that's Talion, and he's out for a while. You go through their lineup. It's Polanco. I mean, you're going to get Dyson, who hasn't even been an everyday player. He's going to be starting in center field for them a lot of the time. Maybe you can get a little something from Trevor Williams and Mitch Keller, who have upside as pitching. Like their pitching staff, starting pitching with Archer and Musgrove, who can have good years. Like that still feels like their strength. But how the hell is this team going to score any runs?
Brian Reynolds proved to be a really good hitter last year. Josh Bell is one of the better hitters in NL, and Polanco. Outside of that, it's kind of like the same thing with the Brewers. They have maybe like a good core, but overall, top to bottom, not a very good lineup. Dyson's a fun guy to watch. He's fast as heck. He's going to steal a lot of bases. Just a matter of getting on base. That's going to be the key for him because he could fly. He could definitely fly around the bases. Pitching wise, when they made that trade and got Chris Archer, it kind of sent a different signal to me.
Me too.
Than how they behaved since then.
Yep. I thought they were going for it. And it was like, nah, we just made a trade for him. And then there was no follow-up move.
Yeah. Now, Mitch Keller, he's been their top organizational prospect for a while. Excuse me. Let's see if he's able to kind of meet the expectations and beyond. Here's the thing: when you have a lot of wild cards, you're asking a lot if you need all of them to come through. Whereas the team, if they get production from just one out of these two guys, that's one thing. But when you're like, hey, we've got 4 pitchers that we're not exactly sure what we're going to get out of them, and 5 guys in the lineup that we don't know what we're going to get out of necessarily.
Odds are it's not going all well.
It's not going to work out.
Yeah, it's just not. And it's funny. Last year, a team that we both liked quite a bit is the St. Louis Cardinals. They're the final team in the NL Central, and they lost Ozuna. I think the late start might help them with Mikolas and Andrew Miller, giving them a little bit of time to get healthy, to recover. They don't feel like they got a lot better to me than last year. They feel like they're the same type of team. Maybe they're a little worse by losing Ozuna. Their starting pitching is fine, with Flaherty, Hudson, Wainwright, Martinez, Kwang Him Kim should be able to give them some additional depth there. I just don't know how much better they are. In a competitive division, I have them slotted right behind the Reds. I think they'll probably be battling for the division. I have them both ahead of the Brewers and the Cubs. I think we probably kind of see this division pretty similar. It sounds like, at least on paper.
Yeah, agreed. I love their bullpen. Their bullpen's fantastic. They've got the potential of having a nice starting rotation.
Yes, they do. They really do.
To me, I think it's all going to come down to, can Tommy Edman replicate what he did last year over a full season? And, New Yorker, Harrison Bader, can he finally put it all together and have the type of season that I think he can have? Because this guy could be a 25 home run, 25 steal kind of guy. He can absolutely fly.
Man.
Super athletic. So I like both those guys. If they can get big years out of those guys, they can make up for the loss of Ozuna.
Let's get to the NL West. This is actually the of all the divisions, this is the one where the team that projected Dodgers are the most heavily favored to win this division more than any team in any division in baseball. The Arizona Diamondbacks, they made some moves in the offseason, bringing in Marte, who's projected to hit 20 home runs and steal 20 bases. Cole Calhoun hit 33 home runs last year. You're bringing in Madison Bumgarner. So they should improve this year. They should be better. How much better? Is it going to be enough to compete, and push the Dodgers at all, or to compete for a wild card spot? We'll see. But just some of those moves alone, they should be a little bit better team. I have them kind of around 500.
I think that's reasonable. I think for them, if they can get a good season out of Zach Gallen, who's
he's a key, like an X
guy they traded for from Miami. He's going to be a key. I'm not high at all on Mike Leake. I think Robbie Ray is highly inconsistent. We'll see what they could get out of Luke Weaver. Overall, it's not a very good pitching staff. And Bumgarner, he's had a lot of innings under his belt, so we'll see how much is left in the tank for the big guy. Like you mentioned, I think Marte at the top of that lineup, along with Escobar.
That'll be fun.
They're really, a lot of fun. That's a solid threesome to start a ball game. But after that, David Peralta, Christina Walker, Cole Calhoun, Nick Ahmed, and Carson Kelly. It's not a top to bottom fantastic lineup.
Next up in the West is this is one of my kind of sneaky teams. I don't know if I maybe make a wager on them to make a wild card. I don't think they can win the division. But the Rockies 2 years ago and 3 years ago were a pretty good baseball team. And then last year they were just miserable. Everything went wrong. Their starting pitching went just completely haywire. And it's going to all come down to Freeland, who in 2019 was 3-11 with a 6.73 ERA. He's had an injury recovery. He's had a remodel of his windup. In 2018, he was top 5 in the National League in innings pitched, and he had a 2.85 ERA, which was the lowest in Rockies history. So when you look at their starting pitching, if he's just able to come back to life and not be that dominant, but just be an average starting pitcher, and then you add him with the likes of some of their other starters, very, very good at the top of the lineup. They're going to score runs there. With Arenado, with Story, with Blackman, with Dahl, with Murphy, their lineup is fine. So give me Freeland, John Gray, Herman Marquez, Sendazella. That's not a bad pitching staff for this Colorado team. I think they have much better chance to be like a 500 team to a team battling for a wild card than a team that was really, really bad like they were last year. So I think they're going to be a little bit better than other people think they're going to be.
When you're like handicapping a race with a buddy, let's just say we're both we both got the racing form out and we're digging through the PPs and I ask you to make a case for a long shot that I want to put in the third, and then you're going to look at maybe like whatever factors you like. He's got early speed, high percentage trainer, first off a claim, whatever factors that you're into to be able to make a case for that team. The case for the Rockies to maybe even do like a $10, win World Series kind of wager is that most likely this year they're not going to be playing in Colorado. So where everybody's evaluating their pitching staff as being a bunch of ERAs of 4s and 5s and that type of thing, in their bullpen and in their starting rotation, et cetera, I would spend some time and look at the home and road splits for their pitchers. That's where I'd spend a lot of my time, because hitting wise, remarkably, I think Trevor Story's been pretty consistent in Colorado and on the road. I think the same thing for Blackman. Daniel Murphy, we already know he could hit just about anywhere. He's a really good, solid hitter. So this might be a team that, because of how people are looking at the data, the analytics, the stats from last year, they may be skewed a little bit.
Yep.
Into being kind of down on this team.
That's a great point. And
so that to me is going to be the interesting case to be made. Is what are they like on a neutral
spot?
Yeah, on sea level.
And Wade Davis, who's a 3-time All-Star, his 2018 was okay. He had an 8.65 ERA and a 1.8 WHIP. I mean, bad is an understatement for how bad he was. If you just get like slightly below average years from Wade Davis and Freeland, this team is like 7 or 8 games better right off the bat. So I think
how many 14 to 12 games that they all experienced.
The Dodgers went up there and swept them in a series
yeah.
that they could have lost every game that weekend, and they should have. And it was just like their bullpen just kept blowing games over and over.
So imagine,
and over.
if you're not involved in those games, think of what that would do to a stat line. And every one of those pitchers got beat up at home at some point in time. And they have a relatively young pitching staff. So I think there's a case to be made that this team can beat expectations quite dramatically. With that said, I still have them below the obviously the Dodgers, but I think Arizona's a little bit in Colorado are going to be kind of fighting for that next spot along with San Diego.
And then we get to San Diego next. Let's talk about the Padres, who, every year they're kind of that team that you can look at and you feel like, they're not too far away. They made a couple of nice moves last year. They've had a very good farm system for quite a while. So I would not be surprised in any way, shape, or form to see this team be pretty good, to be a pretty competitive type team. They would not shock me. I like on Fangraphs had them winning 87 games and battling for a playoff spot. You look, if Chris Paddock continues to step forward as a top of the line starting pitcher, Zach Davies is pretty good. And then you look at Lucchesi, like if he's your 3 or 4, and then you add Garrett Richards in the mix, like those are 4 pretty solid starters. You look at their lineup: Machado, Tatis, Hosmer, Pham. Bringing in Tommy Pham was nice. Jerickson Profar is going to be a nice acquisition for them too, who can kind of move all over the place. And then they've got Dozier as a fill-in stopgap if they need. In their bullpen, Kirby Yates and Pomerantz. This team is to me, they're an above 500 team, and a couple things go their way, they're a wild card team.
I agree. And it's. I wonder why they soured on their outfield, because they just blew that thing up.
Yeah, Margot and they had it.
Margot and Franmil Reyes and Will Myers is still on the team, I believe. But I thought that was like a really
good outfield
compelling
for the future.
Outfield.
Yeah.
And then they just blew that thing up. So I wonder what happened there. But obviously, when you're looking at the replacements, Tommy Pham, he's a solid big leaguer. They got Trent Grisham. He was the top prospect from Milwaukee. Surprised that Milwaukee was willing to part with him, especially because their lineup is substandard. But I think that's going to be the key right there, is a guy like Trent Grisham who comes in from Milwaukee, left-handed, desperately needed left-handed presence in that lineup. We'll see how it goes. But when you're talking about a guy like that, along with Profar that they got from the A's, and then a huge prospect in Francisco Mejia, who they got from Cleveland, there's a high ceiling, I think, for these guys. And that, to me, is what's exciting about the San Diego Padres.
The Padres are projected, or I think in the power rankings, they're, let's see, what are they in the ESPN power rankings? Number 20, 12 plus 1,200 to win the NL West, plus 1,800 to win the NL, plus 6,600 to win the World Series. They have a nice rookie named Gore to keep an eye on too, who they're also very high on.
Mackenzie Gore.
Yep, Gore, and then we'll talk Giants and Dodgers. I guess we skipped over the Dodgers, which is pretty funny, but let's talk Giants first, and then we'll close things out with the Dodgers. this Giants team is old, Mike. They didn't make a lot of moves again. And it's like, I just look at their lineup and the people, the players that they need to have really good years. I mean, Pablo Sandoval should be healthy now. Tony Watson, likely their closer, but they're the number 24 ESPN power rank team. And I don't think there's anybody. I have them last in the division.
Yeah, that's
I like everybody in here. I like everybody in here way better than them. I don't have a reason. Remember they got hot for a while last year, and everybody was scratching their head like, what the hell is going on? Like, how is this team continuing to win games? And then they kind of hit their wall and started to regress back again. But
look, I'm not big on their manager. They have their lineup is definitely long in the tooth. I think Mike Yastrzemski had a nice rookie season, but he wasn't a big prospect, and I'm not sure that he can maintain kind of what he started last year. And outside of kind of the guys that they've hung on to from the World Series years, the vets that they got, I'm not that high on Evan Longoria anymore, not that high on Alex Dickerson or Billy Hamilton, or even Hunter Pence, who somehow was able to find a resurgence in Texas. But I mean, that's who they got this offseason is Hunter Pence. I mean, so and Billy Hamilton, that was their offseason, by the way. Billy Hamilton and Hunter Pence. I mean, that says it all, right?
Yeah, it's funny to probably talk about the team that is projected to win the most games in baseball and maybe spend the least amount of time on them. But the Dodgers are a team that I'll probably spend a whole lot of time talking about all throughout the season because obviously they're the team I root for, and they're just really good. I mean, there's not a whole lot more to be said about them.
They're the best team in baseball, Gino.
They are on paper. They are. They don't really have very many weaknesses
on paper and in reality. I mean,
in reality,
they're the best team.
The Dodgers' whole team in 2019 had a higher OPS than Manny Machado, Marcell Ozuna, or Joey Votto.
That's insane.
Their whole team.
And do you know that in their starting 9, 8, I guess, their lineup, let's just say, Justin Turner is the only one that's north of 30 in their starting lineup.
Yeah.
Mookie Betts, for as many good years as he's had, he's only 27.
It's unbelievable. And, you forget about guys like Seager because he's kind of had a bad couple years and bad just by his standards. And you have Bellinger, obviously, he's so good. Muncy's just become this steady. And then you have, the Kikis of the world, the Chris Taylors who are just so versatile. You can plug and play wherever. Someone like Matt Beattie who keeps coming up. Now the Dodgers have a rookie this year who's, on the short list for Rookie of the Year, Gavin Lux, who I just don't know. I mean, like, there's so many other good players. I wonder if he's going to be able to play every day enough, because if he struggles a little bit, then maybe, he's not in the lineup all the time. This is a good team. They could probably field 2 teams and probably field 2 actual starting pitching rotations. They're going to be really fun. I just hope they play this year because they're a team that could get really screwed if this, for some reason, there's no baseball season because they have a couple of guys that are going to be free agents at the end of the year, and they would have basically traded to get Mookie for nothing. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens with free agency because then do things change if you don't play? Does it go to another year? Is it your age? A lot of questions, but I don't really have a question about this Dodgers team being a good baseball team. I mean, they should be one of the best teams in baseball again, and then it'll most likely just come down to October for them again, Mike, when the fans of the Dodgers will start to get on pins and needles and get a little nervous. Although as a Dodger fan now, I feel a little bit better knowing that they did get cheated. I feel like a little bit less, like I'm not as hard on them knowing that, they got to a World Series, which what we wanted, and they were playing against a team that cheated. So it's kind of hard.
But you know what, though, Gino? That kind of puts the pressure on them.
It does.
In a unique
you're right.
way, though,
it does.
right now, because now it's like, okay, what's your excuse now?
You're
and
right.
When you have that expectation, and I think that's why you heard maybe a couple of guys out of that locker room kind of make some comments, and then they kind of backed off, and it was quiet after that. And I think it's probably for that reason, because now they just got to go do it.
Yeah, let's just go do it now. You know what? Like you said, maybe they use it as a chip on their shoulder, a galvanizing force, whatever it may be. But there's definitely pressure on this team now because you have bets now. You are set up. This is the bet no matter what. 2 years ago, they won a ton of games. They won a ton of games last year. Or 3 years ago, they won a ton of games. This is the best team they've had in the last maybe ever.
I think this is definitely
top to bottom.
Yeah, I mean, maybe outside of the years of like Duke Snyder,
Sure.
And back
the
then,
Brooklyn
this
years.
this is the best Dodger team that they've fielded, in my lifetime. And one of the things that is going to really be evident about them, especially with Seager coming back and Lux in the middle part of the infield, is that they're going to be a very fun team to watch defensively. And in terms of their sticks, I love how many lefties they've got in a league that's predominantly got right-handed pitchers, in a division that's predominantly got right-handed pitchers. So, you're talking about Muncy, Bellinger, Jock Peterson, Seager, Lux, all swing it from the left side. So, and they've got some good right-handed hitters off the bench. So, I mean, there's no matchup that you could defeat the Dodgers in, because either way they're going to have an answer.
Going to be a fun season for the Dodgers, looks like, and hopefully we'll get to see Mookie Betts mash. So, Mike, before we get to the 2-hour mark, we'll close things out here. But hey, you know what? When we're going through the baseball, we're going through all the teams. We want to make sure we give every team a little shot and talk a little bit about them. So I know you have some season awards and some things like that. You have some predictions for, right?
Yeah, and the Rookie of the Year type stuff is going to be almost impossible without knowing a start date.
Sure.
Because some of these guys may
not come up.
Baseball's got that funny rule where, the teams kind of do some gaming and they call the guys up, after the first, I don't even remember how many games now. But it all has to do with service time. So, it got a lot of attention when Boris was complaining about it with Chris Bryant a few years ago. But normally, you'd basically be seeing a lot of these rookies that are ready to start in the majors right now. The Padres did it with Tatis last year.
Yep.
Right? They brought him up right away, and they're like, we're not going to jerk with it. We're gonna and that was definitely to the benefit of the player. They didn't have to do that at all. But point is, so I don't know how that's going to all work out this year. I don't know if they start in the bigs, will they have a season in the minor? If you don't have a season in the minors, now why is that even a question mark? Because you have a huge TV deal making gate receipts not that critical.
Yes.
They're huge, but it's not that critical. But in the minors, if you don't have concessions and gate receipts, you can't play a season. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see how this all plays out. Can you have a season without call-ups?
All of this stuff, trade deadline, what do they do? When is it pushed back? Is it forward? There's
but trade deadline, you could come up. You could
come up with an arbitrary
date.
You
could just say we're gonna at the 68% mark of the season, whenever it starts, we're gonna have it, right? But something like this, if you don't have call-ups, what are you gonna do?
Because everything is based on a set number, right? And it's all based on the past. It's all based on something that we have a sample to use. It's going to be very, very strange.
It is. I think they're almost going to have expand the rosters by if you're not going to have a minor league system where guys can play and stay hot, they're almost going to have to expand the roster with a practice squad.
Sure.
Right. So you have maybe 15 more guys
that are playing simulated games somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. You're not going to have to worry about travel expenses and more hotel rooms and more flights and all that kind of stuff, because most likely they're going to be playing in a neutral site and there's going to be very little movement. It's pretty much going to be kind of like what you described the NBA, to the hotel and back, that type of thing. Hotel, stadium, back, hotel, stadium, back. So that's kind of what I'm expecting. So with that said, my Rookie of the Year picks in the National League, are Christian Pache, Drew Waiters, and K. Brian Hayes. That's in the National League. In the American League, I've got Luis Robert, who we spent some time talking about, Joe Adell, and Jesus Luzardo. Those are my three in the American League.
And the American League are more sexy, well-known names, too.
Yes.
All three of them we've seen more of, and we know a little bit more of than the guys in the National League a little bit.
Exactly right. In terms of MVP, to me, I don't know which Dodger, but I'm going to say a Dodger, right? And maybe multiple Dodgers, maybe Betts and Bellinger. but we're going to definitely see a Dodger in the top 3. I'm going to say it's probably going to be Pete Alonso, Bellinger, and Betts, and I can't pick who it's going to be. But I think those are going to be the 3 guys that are going to be. I love, obviously, Christian Yelich, but I don't think he's going to be able to drive in enough runs in Milwaukee. I know the RBI isn't a stat that is given a lot of weight nowadays, but still, production involves other.
And you got to win, too. Yeah, maybe they're not that good. That's another thing, too. We don't know. Right. We don't know. So, and if the Mets and Alonso carries them and they're a little bit better, and they kind of have the narrative, like if they're good and they're in the mix, they can say, oh, Alonso's carrying them, even with Syndergaard out, a lot of these things are narrative driven too, so that could definitely be it. He's the rookie of the year coming back with another year. Betts obviously coming over to the Dodgers, was he involved in cheating stuff with the Red Sox? Who knows? There's great narratives for the ones that you mentioned.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. Let's see here. The American League MVP is really tough because you have. I think the NL is more top heavy. That's not to say the AL doesn't have superstars, but I think the best players at the top are in the National League. Because I didn't even mention like Acuna, I didn't mention Albie, Soto, guys that I think are going to be right there as well. I'd love to be able to say I got 10 MVP candidates, and it would be obvious who they are. But when we're making these kind of predictions, you kind of want to limit it to your top
3. Yeah, just 3. Sure.
But in the American League, I'm gonna say that Judge is gonna put it all together and put together an MVP season this year. I think this is going to be his year. I think he's one of those type of guys that, especially in a neutral field, is just simply going to have more power than anybody else.
So Judge and the Yanks there for possible MVP. Did you do anything with the pitchers?
Yeah, it's going to be a very tight contest in the National League between Castillo from the Reds and Buehler from the Dodgers. I think it's going to come down to those 2 guys. And in the American League, oh boy, I'll tell you that's a crapshoot because we know how much the Cy Young Award kind of ties together with wins, and but yet the teams that I look at and see winning a lot of games don't necessarily have the best pitching staffs. So I tried to come up with something. And just kind of wasn't able to in the American League. What are your thoughts?
I think maybe one of the A's guys like Manea. I think I would give it a look too. I think he has the opportunity to come back and just have a monster year. Maybe if Clevenger's healthy for the Indians, someone like that. But I'm kind of with you. You look at the best teams, and I don't know if they're going to be carried by top number 1 stud pitchers.
Yeah, because Odorizzo could have 17
maybe
wins.
Barrios was one who I was high on last year for the Twins. He could be another one who racks up a lot of wins for them. But I think I would maybe go Manea or a Montes, one of the young A's
I think that's
pitchers.
I think those are great picks because I think it's going to be one of those guys that maybe doesn't have a big time national marquee name that's going to win it in the American League.
So, man, Mike, this was a blast. Thank you. I mean, we would never get the opportunity on the Mike Abadir show, which we do every week, when it's only an hour and then it's about 50 minutes when we have a couple breaks. We have some guests that come in. We generally talk our 2 or 3 different sports. This would have taken us 4 shows, to be able to get all this information and go through everyone. And I know you put a whole lot of work into this. You have a real hardcore National League fantasy team, and then you went through all the American League and did a lot of research over the last couple of days. So I really appreciate that. I think the people are going to love being able to kind of kick back and listen to some baseball talk for a couple hours.
I appreciate the invitation, and you're right. This is a different type of show. To me, they've got very different feels. This is enjoyable. It's fun because we could just sit back and kind of
shoot
debate
the lineups
and shoot the shit and just kind of be able to kind of think through the holes, the strengths, the weaknesses, and to kind of talk aloud as to how this is all going to play out. By the way, I forgot to mention because I have it in my notes here. Blake Trinan's a nice move, by the way.
Oh yeah, for the Dodgers, and
Yeah.
it's a really nice move for them. And they got they brought in Alex Wood obviously, and then even Jimmy Nelson, who's another one who's those are the kind of moves that the Dodgers and you even said like the A's and the Rays make. It's like you make two or three of them, one of them hits,
Yep.
and that's all you need.
Yep. So I guess the last thing, kind of before we wrap up here, I do think that the Dodgers are finally gonna get over the hump, and this is gonna be their year to win the World Series.
I hope you're
That's
right.
my winner.
I do think that this feels like it too. It feels like if they were there against the Yankees or an A's or an Astros team or whoever, the Twins, I just feel like they'd have a little bit more depth, top to bottom, bullpen and pitching staff. So hopefully we'll be celebrating a Dodger World Series. It's
gonna be an all California World Series. A's, Dodgers.
That would be a blast.
Of the '88 World Series.
Oh, that would be such a blast.
It would be an absolute blast, man. We'll by the time that happens, we're gonna need it here in California. Sorry, New York.
Give us your plug on Twitter, and then obviously the Mike Abadir show is every week on Thursday from 7 to 8 Eastern. You can hear us live, or you can get if you subscribe to the show on anywhere you get your podcast, you can hear us. We have an hour conversation each and every week where you're able to use your connections in football and a lot of the guests that we bring on through the Athletic. So we are able to get some really nice guests. Like last week, it was fun where one of our guests was literally on ESPN from about 3:45 to 3:55, and then right afterwards came on and talked with us on the Mike Abadir show.
Yeah, like I said, it's a very different type of show. But I think the funnest part about it is that you and I get to do it together. Yep. And look, I don't have a background in media. I'm not a journalist. But I've got connections, I've got contacts, I'm in the industry, and the thing that I felt was going to be the most fun was to parlay that into an opportunity to have these really fun conversations. But it's kind of a quick hit, a shorter, 3 segments, get in, get out. When we're done, we're like, man, I can't believe it's over already.
Yeah, it's just more live radio that you hear on when you're listening to the Talk Sports on the car, and we have an hour. So a lot of times we get in, get out, and some shows it's even a lot more about our guests. Sometimes we'll bring in a couple different guests, and we're covering whatever is relevant from all different sports. That's just what we've had a lot of fun doing it, and I really appreciate that. That you asked me to do this with you. It's already been a couple years now. Crazy to think about.
Time flies, man.
It really does, and I love doing it with you each and every week. Where do we find you on social media if we want to give you a follow?
So I'm on Twitter, Mike Abadir, Abadir, no spaces, no underscores, no periods, and I'm not. I just actually set up an Instagram account like a week ago. But I have not done a single post. I don't think I have a picture up or nothing. So Twitter is where I can be found.
And very good at going back and forth, conversing with people. You always do a great job of interacting with all the folks out there and sharing your opinion. So, Mike, this was a blast. We'll definitely get you back on, and hopefully we get these sports started back up and we have more to talk about. We can do some extended Mike Abadir shows, because I feel like some of these times when we do a show, it's like the show goes by so quickly, and there were still a few things that you and I wanted to talk about. So anytime we still have a little overflow, we can come back here and record a little extra on That's What G Said.
You could book it. Sounds good.
Okay, buddy. Mike Abadir.
Thanks, Gino.
Thanks, Mike. Let's take a quick break here on That's What G Said, and we will be right back. Don't go anywhere. Big thanks to Mike. That was a lot of fun talking some baseball with Mike and getting an opportunity to go through every single team. So just a quick recap for some of my overall baseball thoughts. I do think the Yankees are going to be tough, still in the American League East, and I think the Rays would be the other team there. In the Central, the team that I'm high on is the White Sox. I think Minnesota is going to probably win that division. I wouldn't be against taking a flyer on the White Sox as a possible playoff team. I think they're just going to be a much improved team. My concern is they're just going to be running into a Minnesota team that just looked really, really tough this year. And then I'm going to take a swing with the Oakland Athletics in the West, and I'm going to hope that the Astros struggle this year and have to come back to life a little bit. In the National League, the East, I do think it's going to be between the Braves and the Nationals there. The injury to Syndergaard really hurt the Mets, who I thought may have had an opportunity there. In the Central, I'll go with the Reds, and then I think behind the Reds probably the Cardinals, and then in the West I do think it's the Dodgers. So nothing too crazy, nothing too outside the box, but a couple sneak teams that have an opportunity to maybe upset in the division or or make a run at a wild card. Let's talk some Tampa. Horse racing fans, Wednesday, Tampa is going to get the main focus, so let's get right to it. And let's get into race number 1. You can play pick 5 right off the bat at Tampa. And in the opener, I like the 2 a little bit, Eartha. She had kind of a weird start last time out. She broke out, then she broke back in. She recovered to get up to second. She was pressing just off. She moved to the lead, but then she was immediately tackled by the big favorite, Candy for All. And Eartha ran really well. She just got nailed late for second. Now you're getting a big cutback from 7 furlongs to 5.5. She can sit a little bit. She has some speed. I think she's going to be in the mix throughout, and she's going to be really, really tough in here. The 8, her debut race at Monmouth in August on the turf, that was the best race that any horse in this race has run. Now, it was on the grass, sprinting, and she doesn't come back until February. She has to need that last race. It's in the slop. It's at Gulfstream. It's against Better. Now she's cutting back to a sprint on the dirt. I think the 8 horse has a big shot in here. Problem is, it's not, connections that are a household name or connections that are hot or anything like that. So the 7, and Irene, she's the one to beat on the slight cutback. And then the 11, if you're looking for another one, a first-time starter, the dam of this one was a winner. Has produced a couple foals, 3 foals, 2 winners. This first-time starter just wouldn't have to be a monster to beat this group. So let's go 2, 8, 7, 11. We'll put the 2 horse on top. In race number 2, I like the 3 American Driven. Broke in a bit, settled 6, was 5 off, and then stuck inside, wanted to go, but had no room, and then got shuffled and got stuck behind horses. Didn't really get a chance until it was too late. I think American Driven, lightly raced with some upside. To me, this is the horse to play in here if we can get anything like over 3-1, 3-1-ish or so. The 7, Hubba Bubba, should come running, and I think that's the one they all have to hold off in here. The 2 races at the level are both really good, with some trouble in both of them, and might have been best. And then the 5, Old Fort. Yeah, 0 for 15, but seems like a fit at this level. He's going to at least come running and pick up some pieces, and if he gets the right kind of trip, he can win this. 3, 7, 5 in here. Put the 3 horse on top. Let's go to race number 3. And this was, I'll have a couple of approaches in here. I do have the 6 on top, 3 Olives. He adds the blinkers. He just had a brutal start last time out. He hopped. He did not a very good first 100 yards. And then he made a big wide move. He tried hard all the way, and he finished second. That was going a mile 40. Now he's going to cut back to 6.5 furlongs. I love that cut back from the mile to 6.5. Really wide trip, couple starts back. He really fits well in here. So I'm going to have him on top. If we get anything over 7-2, probably worth a win wager. The 3 looks like the other one. Mozano. And then, after that, you start looking like the 8, dropping, adding the blinkers. You make a case for this one. The 1, Ponzin, who is the beaten favorite at this level, going 7 furlongs from the rail. Probably, hard to completely leave out of the exotics. The 5, Bumpa. You can probably excuse the race on the grass, and at least he showed a little bit of early speed in there. The 10, Essor is another one who adds the blinks. Probably too early to give up on the 11, who's dropping in class. So then you can start making cases for many. I do have the 6 horse on top and kind of 3-6 on a tier a little bit above. And then, the others that I mentioned after that. In race number 4, the 8 is where we'll start. Scarlet Bow. She's looking for 4 in a row. She can sit. She can pass horses. She has some of the better turf form in this field, and she's just in really nice form right now. The 1, Sapphire Jubilee, when you're just kind of looking at everyone's races on the grass, she's, obviously got some of the better grass races also. The 4, Mama White Sox, she's dropping. She's going to go second time on the grass. I'm kind of treating her like a wild card who has a little bit of speed in here. So I'm going to use the 4 and some exotics, and the 3 Elusive Rider, who's just another really, really sharp one. Has to improve on the turf, but Elusive Rider is, this is the time to take a swing. Just a really sharp animal right now. So 8-1-4-3. Let's go to race number 5. And we will put the 11 on top in here, and that's Perp, who ran really well for the new barn when a runner-up effort last time out on March the 14th, moved in between horses, then had to alter course late, was a clear-cut second. I think the 5 is another one you want to include in some exotics. One Fine Ride, who's going to cut back second time for the Delgado barn. Second off the claim for them. The 6, Never Have I Ever, on the class drop alone is going to be much better in here. The 8, I'm a Coal Man. I think you're going to get some speed from this one at least, and you could get a good little run for your money against a field that I don't know how much speed is in here. The 12, you want to go a little bit deeper. Game Day Drama. It looks like the other speed, so it's probably going to be the 8, I'm a Cool Man, and the 12, Game Day Drama, battling it out early. 11, 5, 6, 8, 12. I have the 11 and the 5 kind of on the top tier, the 11 on top. And so, some early pick 5 thoughts. The late picks, I'm not really that interested in the late races. I'll give you a couple horses to use, but I'm not going to play, I don't think, any kind of like rolling exotics in the lates. I'm going to focus more on the early pick 5. So a couple of different thoughts. I think you can maybe play a ticket like 2-7-8 with 3-5-7, with 3-6, with 1-3-4-8, with 5-6-8, 11-12, something like that. You can also play a smaller ticket and shorten up where you're doing something like 2-7-8 with 3-5-7 with 3-6 with 1-8 with 5-11. Another approach, if you want to use the first time starter in the first 2-7-8-11 with 3-7 with 1-3-5 6-8-10 with 1-8 with 5-11. But I don't really love giving the tickets out as much as I do kind of just going race by race, kind of telling you how I feel about horses, what kind of price I hope they are, and kind of how I rank them in each race. That way some people want to play a ticket for $6, other people want to play it for $500. So that way you can kind of build them a little more based on whatever your budget is. Or you can add some tickets, add some horses on from some of the horses that we like. I'm not assuming that a lot of people are just kind of blindly following. I'm always kind of the same way, right? When I listen and watch a lot of other people, I like talking racing, talking whatever. I like to kind of add what some of the things that they say or things that I think are good angles to use or good horses to include. Not as much as if I like a horse or if you like a horse and I don't seem to like them, don't really let me talk you off of them. Try to just use as this is more of like an addition than like subtraction from the things that you like. Maybe I can help steer you onto a horse that you weren't thinking about, but if I don't like a horse and you've got a case for them, believe. As we move on to race 6, I like the 2 in here, All-American Jewel. I think, looking at the February race and then the race back at Gulfstream Park West at the end of 2019, this horse doesn't have to show much more than that to be really, really competitive with this group. There aren't a ton of horses with a ton of grass success in here, obviously. So let's use the 2, All-American Jewel. We'll make a win wager if we can get like 6-1 on that one. In race number 7, we'll use the 8, Drama Chorus, on the cutback. He didn't run that well last time out, but his debut race wins this, and he's not really facing a group of monsters in here. The 1, Sky Mischief, I think obvious contender from the inside. You can just toss the race in the slop. The 3, Carmichael, who debuted at Keeneland in the slop and hooked a future graded stakes winner, Wells Bayou. The 11, if you're going to go a little deeper, Positive Impact, who debuted at Belmont Park. Now in the Hardy Barn as McLaughlin has disbanded his stable. 81311 in race number 7. And then the 8th race, I just didn't really love the late sequence. I thought the 6, Our Country, was going to be really tough in here. This is a horse who wasn't beaten a whole lot in the Breeders' Cup, and he's a good animal. Maybe he needs this race, but I just don't, nobody in here. After him, I could, make cases to use horses underneath, or if he wasn't in here, if you're trying to play against him, the 2, the 4, the 7, the 10, all would be logical. But I just thought the 6 was going to be really tough in here. So at Tampa, a couple horses to use in some of those early races in particular. The first race, the 2, Eartha. The second race, the 3, American Driven. The third race, the 6, 3, Olives. And the 5th race, the number 11, Perp. Good luck at Tampa on Wednesday. Let's take a quick break, hear from one of our sponsors. We'll come back and we'll go through Thursday. We'll go through Gulfstream Park, Oaklawn, and then Golden Gate. One of the sponsors of That's What G Said podcast is Cindy Carava, full-service realtor, and I am here over in Glendora at Coldwell Banker with Cindy Carava. Cindy, how was 2019 for you? Tell us a little bit about what kind of stuff you were working on.
Hi, Gino. Thanks for having me. 2019 was just really great. I had a great year selling homes all the way from Altadena, Arcadia, Monrovia, out to Upland and Ontario just recently. The market has been really good. We're looking forward to 2020 with an increase in home prices about 5.8% this year, opposed to last year where it was a little softer. We saw more like homes averaging about 3.5% in increase in value. It's also looking great for buyers. The interest rates right now are going to be staying under 4%. So if you've been on the fence about thinking about buying a home, now is the time to do so with interest rates still staying low.
And you offer more services than just the buying, selling, and leasing homes. Tell us about some of the other services that you offer and what a full-service realtor really is.
So you're right, Gino. Besides me being a full-service realtor of finding properties for my clients to buy or selling their homes or finding rentals for them, I also have a plethora of resources like handyman, contractors, electricians, plumbers. I even, if you're thinking about getting a home loan, I actually work with 2 great lenders that I can recommend to anybody.
And you're all over the internet, social media, websites. Let us know some of the places where we can find you. I know I've seen some reviews on Yelp and on Zillow. Everyone always has positive things to say. Everybody hears me raving about you all the time. But where can everyone else find out information about you or contact?
Thank you, Gino. Yeah, I am on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. And you can contact me on my website, which is www.cindycarava.com, or my email, which is cindyc.realtor@gmail.com, or feel free to call or text me on my cell phone, which is 626-394-6400.
Cindy is awesome. She's one of the kindest and most genuine people I've ever met. I promise you, you will enjoy every minute you interact with her. So thank you very much, Cindy. Appreciate all of your support from That's What G Said podcast.
Thank you, Gino. Have a great day, everyone.
Let's get to Thursday, April the 2nd. Get your Gulfstream Park Pass performances out. We'll spend a little more time on Gulfstream than the other couple. The thing about Gulfstream now, this was generally when the meet would change and it wasn't the championship meet anymore. But now there's no Keeneland. There's nothing in New York. There's really, such few racetracks open all over the place that Gulfstream Park is getting some really, really good races. And this is a strong card. Let's go to race number 1. This is a race that I really don't love, I think, the most all throughout the card. I thought the 2 was probably going to be really tough in here, but I'm not going to spend a ton of time because I just don't love it. So I'm not going to give out necessarily a pick 5. If you want to play some pick 4s or something starting in race number 2, great. The 1 I think you got to begin with in race number 2, Gulfstream, Truly Ambitious, who is really quick already, and then she's going to get forced from the rail, so I think they just have to send her, and she might be able to steal this race. I think she is the quickest already, and just asking her a little more is only going to help. The 10 should sit a nice trip in here, Market Stand, And then the 6 looks like the one to beat. So 1, 10, 6 in race number 2. In the third race, the 4 Take Charge again really looks like the one to catch. She's going to drop a notch, and it just does not look like there's a ton of speed in a race where I like to use kind of some of the more lightly raced horses that have a little more upside. She is one of those in here. The 6 Derby Day Zip on the big drop, obviously going to be pretty tough. And then the 1 Talk to Talk, who has a little speed. If she's close up on the cutback, she's going to be tough to get by late. But the hope is that the 4 Take Charge again can just steal this race. 4, 6, 1 in race number 3. Let's go to race number 4. Maiden special weights in here, and I like the 11 Slip Sliding Away. The connections are a little cold in here, and I'm obviously not a big fan of the draw, but she got hooked wide last time out. She tried to tuck into the 2 path. She was off. She was chasing alone speed. She really could have been second. She ran into some traffic late in the stretch when she was moving best. It really wasn't the best ride. I'm thinking Slip Sliding Away, just a little bit of improvement would make her really, really tough in here. If we can catch like 6-1 or over, she's worthy of a win wager. The 8 versatility is really the key for her. Look at her her last 3 starts, all 3 of her turf races. It's like she's shown a different dimension. She came from way out of it back in December, and then she showed speed in January, and then in February, more of a sit, move, kind of a trip. She's really tough to leave out of your exotics. And then the 3 and the 4, they both make a ton of sense in here too, right? So I'll have the 11, 8, 3, 4 in race number 4. The 5th race, at first glance, I thought it was really wide open, and then I started to dive into it a little, a little more, and I thought the 7, Gilda F, she had a winning type race last time out. She kept trying hard all the way. She was a runner-up. She had a good start, and then she was outrun by a few lengths. She kind of sat second off the leader. She moved to the lead at the top of the lane. She was just second best that day, behind Baby Ice, who we've seen in a lot of the running lines, and that's a sharp Baby Ice. Let's put the 7, Gilda F, on top. We'll use her along with the 6, Worth Avenue, kind of got bumped around at the start, who got stuck in a bad spot on the inside, who had to wait and angled around, was a little bit flat late. Now you're going to get a slight cutback in here, as is the case with Gilda F. So let's have the 7 on top of the 6. Those are the 2 on the top tier in here. Then after that, we'll go with the 3, Fancy Fox. You're going to see a lot of horses changing hands in this race where, they're going into new barns with a ton of horses. The 2, Memorize, is going to go off the claim. The 3, Fancy Fox changing barns. The 4, Sue's changing barns. The 6, Worth Avenue changing barns. And I thought the 3 and the 4 both make a lot of sense in here. The 2, another one taking the blinkers off, has some speed. A lot of these horses should enjoy the cutback, and it might change the dynamic of this race a little bit. The 9 is another one. I wouldn't talk you off, but I do have the 7 and the 6 on top, kind of a tier above. Then the 3, 4, 2, and 9 below them. In race number 6, the 1, Richie's Great Girl. Her February 17th race, when she was going long on the grass, she went down to her nose at the start, and she was just a handful. She kind of was tucked inside at the rail. She wanted to go. She got beat to a spot. She had a lot of trouble, and she didn't get beat a whole heck of a lot. Just beat a couple lengths. Now she should be able to save ground from the inside. She has some speed, but she'll probably be tucked in nicely just behind. You can make a case for many in here. This is a really, really fun race. What's wrong with the 7, Fancified, who won first time on the turf and should get a great trip in here, right? It looks like there's a good amount of speed. I'm expecting Heartling to be flashing some speed. Dienda has some speed. Queen Field shouldn't be far out of it. La Russia shouldn't be far out of it. So it's probably going to be pretty quick early, and I wouldn't be shocked to see either of the 2 inside horses flash a little more speed. Fancified should get a trip. The 2, Glorious Gal, got hooked a little bit wide in a small field, made a 3 wide bid, but kind of got crossed over on late and couldn't outfinish Dienda. then, the 6 Dienda, who has some speed in here, and if they don't go that quick and she's able to get, secure a lead and get out front, she could be tough in here. The 4 Hartling, same kind of thing. She has the ability to sit really close. She's looking for her 5th win in a row. Just a really, really sharp filly at the moment. The 3 Days of Spring should get a really nice trip from off the pace. Same thing with the 10, who could sit a trip. So after, I kind of like the 1 and the 7. I feel like they're going to be good prices and be able to get work out a nice journey in here. But this is why this card was really good. Like, I'm 1, 7, 2, 6, 4, 3, 10. Going to be using combinations of, some tickets where I'm going to probably just punch the all button in the first race and can key in on horses that I like a little later in the sequence. Race number 7, let's go with the 6 horse, Assume, who showed a really good sprint speed. She was 3 wide of 4 pressing. She put away the other 3 that were battling with her, but then just couldn't hold off the horses coming from off the pace. And now she's going to stretch out. I think she's going to be really, really tough in here. We just assume that she's going to be showing speed, but she doesn't have to show speed. But she's the quickest naturally. She'll have to deal maybe with the 1 token from the inside who might go, and a horse like the 2, Never Forget, has a little bit of speed. You'd imagine. You wouldn't be shocked to see the 7 or 8 close, but I just feel like the 6 has the opportunity to outrun this group in here. The 7, she had a bad stumble. She broke out. She settled third. She was 3 off. She loomed up, but she couldn't get to the pace setter, Miss T2. And Miss T2 finished behind Assume on February 23rd. So when you play that common rival game, Assume actually defeated the horse who ends up coming back and defeats the 7. The 2, Never Forget, she went down at the start and then was right up on the heels of the leader, was in a bad spot, tried to angle around but couldn't, had to go back to the rail but was in a little bit too tight. She would not be a shock stretching out to a mile and 16th. And the 8, Beauty Buzz, I think you can make a case for her, putting a couple starts together and stretching out. I think she's going to show some improvement today. Let's go 6, 7, 2, 8 in here. Let's put the 6 horse on top. Moving on to race number 8. I like the 4 in here, Dixie in Candyland. She'll probably get bet because she just had a trouble trip last time. She was traveling really well. She got backed up into, things got tight. She went back up inside again. She came running, but it was too late. She lost a few lengths. She lost some momentum during that race. It was her first start since August, and now she's going to step forward. She's almost had a month in between starts. The 3, Misbehave, another one who I'm expecting, she had some trouble last time out, and I think she'll improve. It was her first start of 2020. The 1, Smack, she's tough to leave out. She has the opportunity to sit a really nice trip. This is probably the distance that she wanted all along. The 5.5 furlong type trip. And then the 8, Bentley's Dream. If you want to go a little bit slow, a little bit deeper, she just had a slow start, and another one who got their first race in a while out of the way and has every right to improve. 4, 3, 1, 8 in race 8 at Gulfstream Park. And then in race number 9, I thought the 5 and the 6 were horses I kind of have on a tier above. Pricing Exercise had a slow start, made a big wide early move, was 4 deep, up to within a length before tiring, but was just hooked really, really wide all the way around after getting a ton of money in the debut. Rosario jumps aboard. The 6th Battalion was inside and was shuffled, was waiting with some run, got bumped, and never really got a shot to run. 2 back showed some pretty good speed. I think Battalion I would put on top of the 5 just because the Battalion might be a better price, and the 6 and 5 would be my top tier of horses. Below them we'll use the 1 Phantom Dance, the 7 Bear Alley, and the 10 Cardiac Kid. Maybe you give Bear Alley a slight advantage just because of the recency, but stepping on the grass for the first time, I thought the 1 and 10 both have a little upside in here. So 6-5, 6-5, 1, 10, 7. In race number 9 at Gulfstream. So horses throughout the card that we like, just a repeat of the selections one more time. In the first race, I mentioned the 2 If you do want to play any kind of exotics, the pick fives do start there, and maybe that would be a race where I would single, and then you can go deep. You can do something like 2 with 1 6 10, with 1 4 6, with 3 4 8 11, with 2 3 4 6 7 9. You can go a little deeper. 2 3 5 8 9 10 in the first, with 1 10, with 1 4 6, with 8 11, with 6 7, and then in the sixth race, maybe pick fours where we single around Dixie and Candyland on one ticket. We can do something like, all in that opener with 2, 6, 7, 8, with 4. And then depending on how deep you want to go in the last, it would be 5, 6 for me. If you want to play a ticket that's a little different, you could do something like 1, 7 with, all with 1, 3, 4, 8 with 5, 6, or, different combinations there. And then if you want to go a little deeper in that last race, it would be 1, 5, 6, 7, 10. But I think you can build a lot of tickets, which I will, around the 4 and the 8th, with the 5, 6, and the 9th. And then we can spread out a little bit in races 6 and 7. The 7 is where I assume a little bit, so maybe you can even have a ticket or two where you key in on that one. The 6th race to me was the race that I felt like was one of the harder races, so I'm not going to try to get too cute in there. I'll probably just have at least a race or two where I'm just buying that one. So, the first, She's Just Quality. The second, with the 1, Truly Ambitious. The third, the 4, Take Charge Again. The 4th, the 11, Slip Sliding Away. You got to keep an eye on, price is key with all these horses. If these horses get bet too hard, you just don't play them to win, and look for the value elsewhere. Gilda F, in the 5th race, the number 7. 6th race, the 1, Richie's Great Girl. The 7th race, the 6, Assume. The 8th race, the 4, Dixie and Candyland. And the 9th, the 5, 6. That's at Gulfstream Park on Thursday. Let's get over to Oaklawn Park for Thursday. Get your past performances out. Not as much at Oaklawn. In fact, nothing that I really even love until race number 4. So let's move to race number 4. You're looking at the Oaklawn races for Thursday, April the 2nd. I mean, in the third race, I thought the 3 was going to be very logical, so I try not to give out stuff that's just really obvious. If I just don't have anything in that race, then what seems obvious, then we just kind of move on. The 4th race, the 11, Caliste Rose. She can sit a little bit closer. She's going to be making her second start now for Amos with Talamo aboard. She last out, she had a fine start from the outside. She settled towards the rear. She moved up. She angled 5 wide and in between. She was moving well late. She just missed second. I thought it was a pretty good effort. She can sit closer. That was in the slop. So, a lot of times it's just harder to really make up a ton of ground, and the horses from, sitting closer get a little more separation. Let's use the 11, and we'll play her to win if we can get anything around, 3-1 in race number 4. In race number 5, the 2, Automate, who's going to go first, start off the claim for a very nice, capable barn. Garcia's having a very nice meeting. And the barn claims, Grant Forrester, claims and immediately goes to the dirt. They first time geld this one, and they go to the dirt, and they go long. Look at who he's faced. Mailman Money, who was 4th in the Risen Star. Prior to that, you have Dennis's Moment. You're in a nice stakes race against a couple horses who come back to win next out. Piece of Chief and McStation. His dirt form is actually sneaky good. And I think he gets the trip in here. Last out, he had a brutal start, and this was on the grass. He got squeezed back. He was bumped around. He was about 6 off. He was too deep. And then he got caught behind horses. He angles in between in the stretch and then around. I mean, back to the dirt now. I like the 2 in here. The 5 JVB is very logical and should get a nice setup. The 8 New Mexico. The real key with him, can he sit? The 7 has some speed. It looks like the 9 has some speed. Can the 8 sit off just a little bit? If he can, he could be very tough, and he could end up working himself out a really nice trip. I thought the 6, making his first start in a while. This is a horse who's always kind of been highly regarded. And The 4, Crockett's Bluff. If you're looking for a bust-out long shot, I'm going to go second off the bench and going to go back long. Should get a great setup in here with some speed to chase. And then the 1, Shackles for Joy, who might have to show a little more speed from the inside. But let's put the 2 horse on top. And that's Automate. And we will play Automate if we can get anything around, 6-1. Race number 6, just 0 opinion. So we'll just skip it. No, really just don't love anyone in there. But in race number 7, I do think the 3, Facilitator, is interesting. You're going to come back into the Steve Asmussen barn, and this is another race that looks like it should have a lot of early speed in here. Facilitator last time out was 6 wide early. He was battling it out. Then he was 3 deep. He was just brutally wide. He gave up a ton of ground. He had no shot with that type of trip. If you cross that race out and just play him off of his form prior to that, I mean, he's a really consistent, honest animal. He's going to give you a good run. He doesn't have to be way out of it, but he should be, able to sit mid-pack to the rear and get a nice setup in here. That's the 3, Facilitator, who will make a top selection. We'll play a win wager on Facilitator if we can get anything around, 5-1 or so. In race number 8, I think the 5's got a shot in here at a big price. Okay, she's coming out of a really strong race behind Bonnie South and She Dares the Devil, who both came back to win graded stakes races. That was going long. Legitimate excuse there. Just put a line through it. 2 starts back in a race where she just doesn't break well, and it's a muddy racetrack. So just because she had previously run well in the slop doesn't mean that when you break so bad, you're going to be able to recover from it. I think there are legitimate excuses for the last 2. And then if you're just playing her off the form prior to that, wouldn't she be like a top contender in here? Especially if we're looking at this race going, okay, Misty Blue is going to have to deal with some other speed, so it might not be easy for Misty Blue because, the 1's got some speed, the 2's got some speed, the 3's got some speed, the 4 has a little bit of speed, the 6 is really, really quick, the 9 is really, really quick, the 12 is quick. So this is not going to be easy for Misty Blue. I'm looking for horses that can sit just off the pace a little bit, and I think that's the 5, Black Cat Taps, at a big price. The 7, Raggedy Annie, she comes out of the grade 3 Honeybee. She tried to go a little longer last time out. She cuts back to a sprint, and she's very, very logical. She's going to come running. The 10, Misty Blue, monster effort last time out. She's looking for her 3rd in a row, and maybe she's just a freak who can just outrun all of these in here. The 11, Josie, should get the kind of trip also we were talking about from off the pace. She has enough speed to put herself in a good spot. And then the 9, Jade Dioro, probably just a little more pace to the party. So 5, 7, 10, 11, 9 in race number 8. We'll try to hook some of them up in some of the exotics. And then in race number 9, I hope I'm right, and if it's, keep an eye on the weather, if it's like really wet and really sloppy, because I feel like a lot of these races look like they should be setting up for horses that can sit off the pace a little bit, and You've Said It All could get the trip. He just got outrun last time out. It was his first start in a couple months. He just wasn't ready to really rock, and there wasn't a whole lot of moving from off the pace. You've Said It All is just going to be sharper this time, and he's going to have the opportunity to run this group down. The 8, Lawton, is tough to exclude. He's really, really sharp, and he's now heading into the Broberg barn. The 3, Pete's Play Call, was hooked 4 wide. He actually ran really well last time out, and he's got some back class. And then the 9, Flat Lucky, if you're looking to go a little deeper in some of your exotics, 6, 8, 3, 9. So the horses to play for me at Oaklawn throughout the card on Thursday. Race number 4, the 11, Caliste Rose. Race number 5, the 2, Automate. Race number 7, the 3, Facilitator. Race number 8, the 5, Black Cat Taps. And race number 9, the 6, You've Said It All. Final track for Thursday, it'll be Golden Gate. Just a couple plays at Golden Gate. First will be in race number 3, and we'll go to the number 4, Jen Pyre Strikes Back. She just felt like she was in a little tough last time out. and she was in tight at the start. She was back to last. She was 5 off, and then she had to move up to the inside. She was third. She got within a couple lengths, but I just don't know if she loved it down inside. This should be a much better spot for her. So we'll use the number 4, and we'll play a win wager if we can get anything over like 5-2 on her, and maybe we can key some exotics around her. One more play at Golden Gate, and it will be in race number 8, and it'll be the number 6, Temple of Soul, who's going to add the blinkers, 2 sprints to a route, stretches out. She broke on top, and then he broke on top, and then he took back. He was 4 off. He was 3 wide. He made a bid. He was then 5 wide at the top of the lane. I think he's getting a big jock upgrade today, and I would not be shocked to see him, much, much closer stretching out today. He has a little more speed than it looks like on paper. Let's include Temple of Soul in all of our exotics. We'll make a win wager on Temple of Soul if we can get anything around 7-2, 3-1 even on the number 6, Temple of Soul. So just 2 plays at Golden Gate. Race number 3, the number 4, Genpire Strikes Back. And then in race number 8, the number 6, Temple of Soul. So you got some Wednesday Tampa. You've got some Thursday with Gulfstream, with Oaklawn, and with Golden Gate. Some options there. Because horse racing, right now, horse racing in WWE and AEW, wrestling, the only things still in town. Hope you enjoyed this episode. A lot of baseball, a lot of horse racing. On the next episode of That's What G Said, we will preview WrestleMania. We'll go back in time and recap an old WrestleMania. We'll talk some horse racing for the weekend, and we'll go around the world in sports and see if there are any news stories or anything, any new free agency news in football, any new player movement, any news in any of the big major sports. Hope everyone stays safe out there. Thanks again for tuning in and making us part of your week. We're going to continue to pump out content for you, and hopefully we're able to kind of just take your mind off of everything for a little while and keep you entertained and keep you informed. Thanks for listening to That's What G Said. Here's the Joey Cleveland experience closing it out.